What up, rockers? How's it going? Coffee's not quite done, so I got to run out there in a minute and grab it. But I just saw I was going to miss a super chat in here, so I thought I would hit it just right off the bat. It's Andrew Paul, and he's got a question about impedance curves and reactive loads. Well, first of all, how's everybody? Good to see y'all. Good to see you all here. We got Ben Coombs in the house. What's up, man? And lots of folks already here. 160 of you. Nice to see you. So with the U-shaped impedance curve, okay, like I'm not an expert. I'm not an amp tech, but I will say that John is he's brilliant, and I generally defer to him about things like this. But he's also he's very safe. That's part of his personality. He's really, really conservative when it comes to issues like this. It depends how you feel about, like, would I crank my 100-watt vintage Marshall into a reactive load that maybe didn't have a curve that looked exactly like a speaker? There's a degree of, I think, I mean, I've used these things for years. I have an aux sitting right here. I have, it's up to the individual user, I think. Know that when you're doing it, no matter what, if you do it into a speaker cabinet, you're stressing an amplifier, right? You're driving. It's like, revving a race car on a dyno, just like up to, like, you're really the output transformer is working hard, right? The tubes are working hard. You're gonna go through tubes. You're gonna, this is just what happens. But that's the price you pay for the great tones, and reducing the volume all the way down to maybe nil if it's a reactive load or an attenuator or whatever the device is. So you make music with it, and maybe you use it. The thing's meant to be used, the amp's meant to be used, and all that. He's just thinking, from a very conservative sort of perspective on it. I will say that two notes, the aux, they all have that sort of a similar sort of U-shaped curve that is still, a good, really good reactive load, I think, and sounds good. And they've sort of stood the test of time. I mean, like, at this point, Two Notes has been doing this stuff for 10 years at least. I think they've had theirs out on the market. And I think that says a lot, so I don't hear a ton of stories of folks with like Torpedo Lives or the original Torpedo Studio or whatever. I haven't seen a bunch of, like, I popped my old Marshall's output transformer or anything. I mean, I look at the forums and all that stuff, and it seems like just through over time that they've sort of stood the test of time. I think he's just saying potentially there's things that could happen, but I'm of the mind that I use them anyway. And I don't, this is like when we're talking about the potential of problems developing with amps over time. Not everybody's running their Marshall on 10 like Eddie Van Halen or something. If you're running an amplifier more conservatively and stuff, that sort of changes the equation. So I guess for me, I use pretty much primarily the reactive load anyway if I'm doing an all on 10 kind of thing. And I feel good about that, but it's down to the personal. I think, actually, come to think of it, in the Two Notes literature, they say, like, not all amplifiers sound good turned all the way up, and just because you can do it doesn't mean you should, and it's probably not a great idea to run your amp like that all the time. I seem to remember in the literature, the manual or whatever for the Torpedo Live, them saying that, like, this, you shouldn't do that all the time. It's not advisable and with your amp. So just keep all that in mind. I use the aux and I enjoy it. I haven't had any problems with amps with it. I used Torpedo Lives in the past, haven't had any problems. So if we're talking about reactive loads, maybe they go outside the realm of, like, when the curves start to look really different, or maybe are, when your amp's completely unloaded at a certain frequency or something, that's when I would start to worry. And go, okay, you're basically, it's your level of risk that you're comfortable with. And I will say for me that I'll use them and feel pretty good about it with the U-shaped curve devices, which everybody, it's kind of widely known now. It's what the aux is, and the Two Notes, they look almost identical, the curves. Okay, so I didn't grab my coffee, so I'm going to run out to the machine and grab it, which will take me 20 seconds. And I'll be right back. All right. Ready. Oh, I missed another couple super chats here, so I gotta find those. Don't want to miss these. Let's see. We got Arthur saying that he's created a small recording setup, iPad and interface. Cool. I've never done that. I've never recorded on like an iPhone or iPad, but I know it's possible and folks do it. Loaded Cubase, killer sound quality, definitely the ultimate on the fly. That's awesome. Yeah, I know you can do GarageBand. You can do all kinds of stuff on iPads these days. Apogee makes some nice interfaces, I think, for working with the iPhone and iPad. And you know, it seems like, I mean, they're computers at this point. You know, it's just flash memory, and so that's fast. You know, and it would seem like they probably work great for recording. You know, so yeah, I just haven't tried it myself, but that's interesting. I'm glad it's working out for you. I wonder what interface. Do you mention which interface do you use? Let us know. Is it like a 2-in situation? Just curious. More guitars. What are your thoughts on the upcoming Sir Legacy? Gorgeous guitars. I was all in and then saw they have. Oh, well, okay. Here's some interesting. I can comment because I have a new guitar here this week. It's not one of those exactly, but check it out. Isn't that pretty? I love this thing, man. It's Inca Silver, and it has a set of EMG. Now, I got a little bit of a story about the pickup. I got a set from EMG, and I had an issue with one of them. There seemed to be something not working right with it. So at Sir, when I had them loaded in this pick guard, there was a problem with one of them. They said, why don't we just load our set that we always use, which is a traditional 85 SA. And that fixed everything. And I said, great, let's just do that. Let's roll with that. And so this is the pick guard and electronics EMG sent me, but just with Sir loaded the 85 and SA. The reason I got this guitar is because, and I know I've missed some super chats, but I'm gonna go back through them and get them all. The reason I got this guitar was to try them out for the noiseless sort of like I you know, as some of you know, I've had problems in this room before with excessive kind of you know, 60 cycle stuff or whatever, getting the pickups even with humbuckers. So, and it works pretty well, I must say. It's kind of interesting. In this room, I find that with a humbucker, I have to sit at this angle, and with single coils, generally, I've got to sit at this angle to get noise cancellation. With this guitar, even with the humbucker, it's this way. So it's kind of, I don't know what that means, but this is where I get the quietest kind of position. And it's quite quiet. It's pretty darn good. Now, the other guitar, I've had this one for years, and I just put a set of different pickups in it to try. These are Fluence Fishman, the modern set. This guitar with on the bridge pickup, pretty much dead to silent, no matter where I sit. So success with this one for sure, as far as the low noise thing. The jury's still out on how I dig the tones and stuff. It's a hot ceramic magnet humbucker. It's not what I would normally use, but it is damn quiet. So that was, if I've got one guitar for high gain, super quiet, this will work just fine. The neck pickup, however, is only about as quiet as a good passive humbucker in this room. So I find that interesting. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the balance coil. Maybe they slightly unbalanced the coils on the neck, because I know the neck is an Alnico in this, and the bridge is a ceramic. So anyways, just doing some experimenting, as I like to do. I like to try things and see what happens. But it's nice to know I've got that one pickup in that guitar it's as quiet as my bass, which is also active and very quiet. And this, quite good. Not as quiet, but I'm actually really liking the sound. It's interesting. I'm not really, it's a different kind of sound. You know what it sounds like to me is like there's a preamp on in line that's just shaping the tone a little bit and buffering. That's what it sounds like, which is exactly what's going on. There's of course a preamp in these. It's active pickups with a preamp, and it's like, oh, kind of like everybody's always like, oh, it's a little more compressed, or they have a different, whatever, how they describe active pickups. And to me, it just sounds like there's kind of a pedal in line between the guitar and the amp that is, buffering and doing whatever. But a good sound. It's a good sounding guitar. It plays great, and I'm using it in a video for a pedal that I'll be putting out either Monday or Tuesday. The video will come out, which is this guy right here. We can talk more about all kinds of fun stuff to talk about this week. Noodler, the Lumen, amazing sounding reverb. Very simple, but very powerful. Sounds really, really good. So the video's almost done for that. Okay, let me find some more of the super chats here and more guitars. Yeah, I will just say that I love the the idea behind the guitars that you're talking about, which is the legacy, going sort of harkening back to sort of the Pensa look and stuff. It has the same neck that I've had on my signature guitar forever, I do believe, which is the Even C Slim, which I like. So those guitars feel really good to me, and it's the same pickup configuration you'll find on this, which, just in summary, I'm really liking. Actually, sounds pretty darn good, and I'm a passive pickup kind of guy. So that's that. Pretty nice looking pick guard too, right? This is the one EMG said. I like it. I'm not a Pearl pick guard guy, but that dark, I mean, it looks badass on this guitar. I think it's sexy. So, okay. Let me see some of the other super chats I missed here. Ben, maybe you can help me if wouldn't mind if you caught a couple of them. I hate to miss any, because I'm getting long-winded talking about things, but I'm just excited about all this stuff. Looking through here, I saw a couple, and I know I think I've missed them, but there's one. There's Ty. As of now, who do you think is the king of profiles? I don't know if I'm the best guy to ask that, to be honest, because I don't live in that world that much. I've made some on my Quad Cortex that I think are great. Really good. I'm just seeing this. I'm just going to comment on it because it's on the same subject. Get the Fluence Classics. I have a set of those too, and I tried them in that guitar, and they were pretty quiet, but kind of like a passive pickup, kind of quiet. I like them. I thought they sounded good, but the goal with the guitar was to get silent, like no 60 cycle crap going on. And I tried a guitar with the hot Fluence, the closed ones, the modern set, and that worked. And so I thought I'd try them in this guitar, and it works as well. So that was the goal. It wasn't even the best tone. It's about quiet, just have one guitar that I can have, not have, 60 cycle. Because sometimes if you're playing a certain part and there's space, and it's really high gain, but there's space between the notes, and you don't want to use a gate necessarily, it's nice to not have that. And furthermore, I guess that's cool to have a guitar with a hot ceramic, kind of almost like a metal pickup in it, because it's cool sometimes for sounds. Okay, back to Ty. I don't know if I'm, like profiles. If you're talking about Kemper profiles, I'm a big fan of the Michael Britt profiles. I'm a bit more of a traditional dude, and so his the way he dials them in and stuff, that just works for me. I've tried some of the other ones. I know it doesn't STL. They've got a bunch, and I've tried some of theirs, but I'm not super well. If you're just talking about the difference between the different devices, I like the Quad Cortex. I really do these days. It's so simple, and I'm really that's one of the things I like about this new reverb from Universe. Simple, like I can get to writing songs and making music more. I like the Kemper. I think it's a really good product. So it's obviously been a big success, very successful for them. And I have one here, and I enjoy it. So not bagging on it at all. There's something about the Quad Cortex where I've drifted towards, because I know it's very simple. And I like that. Not that the Kemper's complicated, I enjoy. It's a good device, and so it's got its devotees. The Axe-Fx is not really a profiler. I mean, does it have? I mean, Cygnus isn't really it's just working with the sounds that are in there. But there's a million sounds in there, and it's got its devotees too. So it's like, I don't know. It's just, you can make great music with any of these things, So honestly, Ronan, have you played through the Quad Cortex anymore? Yeah, I have actually. I made a few quick profiles of the train wreck that I had here, which was interesting because I wanted to see how this is like the worst case scenario as far as making a profile, right? Like how it's such a touch responsive, like amazing amplifier that the player can, you know what I mean? It's an incredible thing. And so I thought, well, let's see how close I can get, and I'll do a couple direct head ones too, and then plug them into a power amp in the same cabinet and see if I can play through it, and and then go back to the amp. They weren't the same, but they were. I was surprised. They're good, and the studio ones I made are really good. I mean, especially for kind of like that, Liverpool like EL84, like rock rhythm tones. It's not going to do with the studio profile through studio monitors. It's not going to respond like the amp in the cab in the room where I was getting all that feedback and everything. It's not going to be exactly the same thing as that, but the tone was great. Like as far as of those profiles, as far as like just rock, like think the tone on Bryan Adams' "It's Only Love" or something. That song. It sounds like that kind of. This is great, awesome, semi dirty, a little bit dirty, compressed EL84, amazing sound. So yeah, I mean, and yeah, I actually this week. I probably shouldn't say who it is, so I'm not going to. But there was a very, very famous guitarist that was interested in the Quad Cortex, and they knew that I have worked with it and stuff. So they asked me to go work with them and kind of walk them through it and give them a little like tutorial on it, which was really fun for me. And so I did that this week as well, and kind of was able to experiment with them, which was a thrill, with the Quad Cortex. And so that was really cool. But so yeah, I've been working with it, still, and thinking about actually like for a couple different things how I can incorporate it. One thing I haven't tried yet is using it 4-cable and just using it for some wet effects, in the loop of like PT15 or maybe in stereo. So that's something I kind of wanted to mess with, and some other things going on. But long story short, yeah. Ty is saying you want a proper curve, go with the Sur or Fryat. I will say that the Sur and the Fryat are the closest, as well as we should give honorable mention to the Fractal X Load, which has a very, very accurate curve, 2 curves actually you can pick from. So it's quite nice as well. But yeah, Sur, Fractal, Fryat, those are the most curves, at least, that look the most like a speaker to the amplifier. That's true. What else we got going on here? I think I thought there was one super chat I missed. Maybe it was a red one, and I'm sorry if I maybe just ask again down at the bottom of the chat. Let's see here. What else you guys talking about? What did I do this week? Is this the week that I put out the hot mod? I think so. The video for the hot mod. What do you guys think of that? That thing's cool, right? Sounds great. I liked it more than I thought I was going to. Where is it? Right here. I'll show it to you. I don't know why. I just maybe assumed it wasn't going to be. It sounds quite refined. Like it sounds like a good mod, and it's not. It didn't sound like there's any compromise to me at all. But there it is. 2 little gain switches, or 2 little switches for gain and bass, so you can control the amount of bass or higher, lower gain, and then it just plugs right into the tube socket. This is a little funny, but still cool. You just got to clamp this at the bottom of I think I clamped it to the bottom of a filter cap, it's grounding to the chassis, so it's a little, but I guess you got to do that. I would have thought that this thing, there's a little thumb screw here that you can tighten that clamps to the tube socket, and I would have thought maybe that would ground, but I guess not. I guess you got to use this thing, or maybe not. Maybe this does, and this is just added, I don't know, protection or something. Anyway, it works really well and sounded great in that old 2203 that I used it with here. Paul says, "What are the specs of the Inca Silver Sur?" So it's a even C slim neck, that's like my signature guitar. Even C slim. It's got jumbo frets, Indian rosewood board, 85, 80 SA is what's in it now. I've got my Wilkinson bridge on there. And it's an alder body. So, man, it feels good. I love the smell of roasted maple when they're new. Delicious. And so you'll hear this guitar actually in the Illumin video that I'm putting out tomorrow. I guess I'll put it out tomorrow or maybe Tuesday. Probably tomorrow. Finish it up today. But I love this thing, man. I love the color. I've never had a silver, Strat type of any sort, and I've always liked them. I mean, I even like those late 70s. Remember the kind of wacky, like 1979, I guess, or 78 anniversary Strats that, and I always liked the look of the black guard and the silver, even though they said anniversary on them, which was sort of weird on the body, I thought. But maybe that was the first silver Strats I ever saw. Well, I guess Inca silver, but it's a really rare color, Didn't see too many of those. So it was around the late 70s anyway. I was getting interested in music. And, early 80s. So those guitars were sort of more prevalent. Those anniversary Strats, you'd see them around. Yeah. What else we got here? Javier, what's up? PT15 came in last week and I love it. Awesome, man. Can you give some advice on dialing it in? Put everything on 5. And then you're probably going to find you're going to tweak tone controls anyway. You're probably going to find you're going to tweak from 4 to 6 on each channel. That's what I do. Just put everything on 5. I generally run the brights on. Sometimes I run the bright off on the dirty side. Always on the clean channel. But on the dirty side, unless you're hitting it with a range master or something, maybe you want to try that on the clean channel, or you've got a exceptionally bright drive. Something like a plexitone or something will work good into the clean channel if the bright is off. But generally speaking, I mean, 99% of the time I got the bright on the clean. The dirty sides, I've got the bright on 80% of the time. If I'm recording a certain thing or I want to darken it up and get a little smoother sound, I might turn it off. But other than that, And as far as the master volumes go, I would put the masters on maybe 3.5 or 4 on the clean channel, and then tweak the dirty channel to, from somewhere from 4 to 5 on channel 2 and 3 respectively. And you should have a good, depending on how you set your gain, that's going to affect too, but that should give you a pretty good, spread of, range there. And then if you run anything in the effects loop, you're not going to be hitting it too hard as long as it can handle a pretty good hot level. The level on the effects loop is not exactly line level, but it's not exactly pedal level either. It's like somewhere in the middle. But yet this is, of course, the send is the masters. So you can, tweak one way or another using those masters, and then set the overall volume then with the return master, because that's safe. You're not going to overdrive your effects or anything by turning that up. So if you want to live a little bit on the conservative side with the masters on the channels and crank up the return master if you've got stuff in the loop, that's my recommendation. Thank you for getting the amp, and I'm glad you're happy with it. I love mine too. I used it on the whole demo for the Lumen, so you can hear it on there. I used this thing in many ways too, which is one of the great things about the PT15. I ran it in front, I ran it in the loop, and I also ran it post the line out, with speaker simulation on the amp, and then I could go into here and split into stereo. So amazing thing about the amplifier, you don't need 2 amps to run in stereo. If you're running into a PA or a recording setup, you can just come straight out of the line out. If you've got a good line level effect, run in there and then split into stereo and get this massive sound with just this great little amp, So it's a fun way to go. Okay, what else we got here? 1970. Oh, there's some interesting info on the silver anniversary Strats. Went back to 4-bolt neck, no bullet truss rod, and Spurzell locking tuners. Did they? They had Spurzell. Did they have tuners back then that were locking? I didn't even know that. Very interesting information. So that's pretty cool. So they were trying to do some get back a little bit, right? Still, they had the big headstock though, right? So a lot of the 70s kind of features. Lavender says, "What is this thing?" The Illumin. So this is a new Nunaber reverb pedal. Basically a reverb, but there's a couple of their algorithms in there. If you've ever tried a Nunaber, like the wet or whatever that has, like there's a wet plus, which is a reverb algorithm, and echo. So you can do a delay. I don't know how long the delay time is, maybe 600 milliseconds maximum. It's a simple echo, like digital echo with reverb that sounds really, really nice. And there's also a detune in here, plus reverb. There's also shimmer and stuff like that, and octave effects with the reverb. So it's not just like a straight up, spring reverb and play reverb, whatever. Those are in here, but also you get these kind of echo plus verb, detune plus verb, really big, nice stereo sounds. So it's a little more than just a. If your delay needs are simple, this might have you covered in one box. You can store, I believe, up to 50 presets. I think there's 50 user and 50 factory. So 100 sounds, and some of the factory things are amazing too. But you can set the buttons to do different things like increment and decrement. And then if you hold it, it'll bypass or active, and then up, down. Or you can make just this all-time bypass, and this just, that's what it does. And then this will increment. So you can set it up to do different things. But long story short, it's very simple. I've been able to figure it out without a manual. And there's an expression pedal input there, MIDI on the little mini jacks. So you want a simple and really nice sounding reverb. It's pretty cool. Yep. What is the price? I think it might be $399 on sale right now. I could be wrong about that though, so don't quote me on it. I looked like on either the website or something, and I saw that the introductory price is a little lower for it. Oh, $379. Thanks for correcting me. $379 introductory, and then I think it might go up. Well, $349, says John. Well, maybe it's different at different places. I don't know. Anyway, it's somewhere between $350 and $400 is an introductory price, and then I think it's going to go up after a little while. Who's up there in the super chat? Oh, that was Javier. So I got to that. Okay, good. Thoughts on Les Paul Studios or Orville's? I like Orville's. They're, Japan-made Gibsons, essentially. Les Paul Studios, good guitar. I mean, a Les Paul Studio is basically a standard, but with less ornate. There's no binding, so it's cheaper for them to make. Yeah, I mean, good. If you want a good, simple Les Paul that does the job, that the Studio was always like the go-to, for kind of like, many people's maybe first real good guitar, that kind of thing. That's a pretty much pro quality. I must say I'm a little bit of a traditionalist when it comes to like Les Paul look. So if they don't have binding, it sort of that messes with my head a little bit. But if I was a kid or like a teenager or something, and I was on a bit of a budget, I would gladly take a Studio. Like back in the day. It's a great option. It'll get you the sound every bit as as a standard and stuff. And they're made in the same place and all that, so it's good. Yeah, quality's a little all over the map sometimes with those guitars, so it's like you want to make sure it's not really heavy or the nut's not cut right or these different things that can happen with them. Find a good one or whatever, but it'll be a solid Les Paul then, as good as any standard. I'm sure quality wise. Ty says he wishes he could use that hot mod on his amp. Yeah, it works on. If anybody's got any questions about what amps that thing works on, because a lot of people are like, will it work on an Origin? Will it work on this amp or that amp? They've got in their frequently asked questions list a list of the compatible amplifiers, because it'll work with quite a few amps, but not with others. So it just depends. It's dependent on the amp having a sort of the traditional Marshall cathode follower. That was me trying to get the word cathode out and Marshall at the same time. Anyway, it's got a traditional Marshall cathode follower sort of circuit. Like one of these two, that's why it plugs into V2. One of these becomes the V2 tube, the cathode follower, and then the other one is a gain boost. So it kind of relies on that design, it has to be that sort of style of preamp for it to work. So some don't have that. That's the deal. What's your recommendation on a delay pedal and a dual mono setup to get independent repeats for each amp and maybe with a detune? Yeah, I mean, that's a common a dual mono setup. to get independent repeats. Well, now you're going to have stereo. You know, if you get different repeats on each side, you will hear the, you know, and then if you detune even one side, you're going to hear stereo too. But that's kind of the way that, like, let's say Eddie Van Halen with his rig, you know, a couple of ST 3000s, that's his thing. Even on his last rig, when he didn't have any pitch stuff going on, you know, no Eventide style detune or anything like that, he had the stereo delays still. I think he like kind of a 250 on one side and a 500 on the other. So you can totally do that and it'll work. I mean, as far as, you know, you can just do two different delays. You know, it doesn't really matter. You could use two different kinds of delays, or, you know, two that are the same and just set them for different times. It's totally possible though. That's the way he did it, you know, for sure. I missed a thanks, Ben. I missed a super chat. It was Casey Strange, just bought an Inspired by Gibson Epiphone Custom SG, and I love it. What's my opinion on the Epiphone? Do I think they're just novice guitars? I don't think so. I mean, you know, we've seen great guitars come out of Korea, you know, with the PRSs, and PRS especially, I will say, I give them credit for those SE models. The ones I've played, I've been quite impressed with. You know, they feel good, and they good solid guitar. And if you make music on a, I mean, let's face it, if Billy Howardell can take a broken, I think it was a Les Paul Studio actually, you know, a Trent Reznor broken Les Paul Studio with the headstock snapped off, grab another headstock from another guitar and put it on that guitar and somehow make it work, right? And then essentially do his Perfect Circle career on that guitar and have a bunch of hit songs, then all bets are off, right? So I think if you get a good one, you know, then it's cool. Like there's plenty of people out there that novice guitar, you know, I don't know. I mean, inexpensive, you know, look at Jack White. I mean, making lots of music on inexpensive guitars, or, you know, Airlines or Nationals or whatever they were, you know. Is that what they're Airlines, right? It was red. You know, Jimmy Page, you know, with a Silvertone, or, you know, it's the same thing. It's just like, it's totally cool. I once now, what messes with my head is just the headstock a little bit, because once again, I'm a little bit of a traditionalist. Maybe that's why I sort of like the look of the Epiphone Explorers or V's more, because they use the regular headstock, right? The Les Pauls, it always looks funny to me just a little bit if it's not the headstock, you know. But that's just me and my, you know, I think a lot of us have that bias, you know. I don't know. I've got this theory about all that, about patents and stuff. But like the Sir headstock, for example, doesn't bother me at all. I like it, and it's because over the years we've seen enough different headstocks on Strat style guitars where we're comfortable with it now. That's what I think. Whereas Gibson's, not so much. It's like always that headstock, that, and so it's still implanted in our, you know, the exact Gibson body shape and the headstock and everything. It's like that's what a Les Paul is supposed to look like, you know. Whereas Strats have kind of, it became the kind of kit guitar in the late 70s, early 80s, and yeah, hockey stick headstocks, and, you know, the Kramer headstock, and like all the different ones. And we got more as a guitar culture accustomed to the way Strat and Telly style guitars looked with different headstocks, and so we're more culturally like accepting about that. Maybe it's the kind of shit I think about. Really, I tell you what. All right, what else we got here? There's a super chat up there I should get to. Dan the Tube Man says so many good guitars being made today. Yeah, it's golden era of, it'd be hard. It's like coffee, right? Like you can't sell a bad cup of coffee anymore, because the 2 doors down there's another place selling like amazing coffee, right? So you're not going to stay in business with bad coffee. Used to be plenty of bad coffee around and plenty of not so great guitars, but not anymore. Did you follow me on my line of thinking there? MSYDT says, do you feel like a wet dry wet setup needs 2 separate cabs, or did the Comet Ambicab Junior really do the same job? Well, the Ambicab is really cool, but you don't get quite the split. That's just, and it's that way too if you run, like, let's say a Marshall cabinet with its 2 sides, you know, because you got the 2 inputs option. Anytime you got a 412 and you do left and right in it, it's, you don't get quite the, you know, as if you had, say, 2 of them split wide in this dry center. So it depends what you want to hear. if you're miking it, who cares? Because it's in ears or whatever anyway, or and then you're going to get the spread. But it's up to the individual player how important that is. The if you want to hear that wide sound, there's no substitute for separating speakers. It's like having a stereo system with the two speakers right beside one another and the amplifier sitting on top with your turntable. It doesn't sound quite as lovely as when you put the speakers on either side of your couch. I don't know, or your armoire, or your whatever. What else we got here? What else we got here? Richie Faulkner's main guitar is his signature V Epiphone. That's interesting. He's a great player. I listened to that newish Judas Priest album maybe a week and a half ago. That's damn good. Ferocious, really. Like, great sounding record. I guess, is it Andy Sneap? Is that the guy that's in, or am I mixing his name up with someone else? I think that's him. He's the guy that's kind of filling in for Glenn, because Glenn's, he's got Parkinson's and stuff, so he's still in the band and all that stuff. But on tour, I think he comes out and plays a few songs, that kind of thing. Anyway, Andy, producer, and he teamed up with a producer that had worked with him many years ago, right? And so it's kind of like the meeting of the newer and the older guys. Man, that really worked. It's a good sounding record. Like, listen to it. It's got great, like, it's heavy and thick sounding and really cool, but it's not abrasive. Like, the guitar sounds are just like, it's really good hard rock metal guitar sounds on that new. I think it came out 2018. Is that right? 2018, 2019, something like that. Is that right? 2020. I think it was 2018. Anyway, bitchin' record. I thought impressive. Any advice on mastering techniques when it comes to instrumentals? I'm just a big fan of not slamming things into oblivion. I don't really care anymore if it's like the loudest thing out there, so I would watch that, because it's nice to retain the dynamics. And although it's like initially impressive, it's kind of like slamming it like that. It's like, it reminds me of the Star Wars movie that came out, the Phantom Menace movie. Remember when that came out? And I remember walking out of the theater and going like, what the hell did I just see? Like, what just happened? Like, it was just like this onslaught of visual, like, whatever, for like 2 hours. And like, I couldn't even remember any of the characters, or I felt like I'd just been assaulted for like 2 hours with just visual stuff. And I was like, oh, George Lucas forgot what a huge part of what made Star Wars cool was character development and the cute characters and how to tell a story, and also had the visual stuff. But it's like he'd just gone whole hog into Industrial Light and Sound, or whatever it's called, his company, and then didn't really do storytelling anymore, and went, yeah, we're gonna make all this crazy visual stuff, and then did that for the next 20 years or however long, right? And then made another movie, and it was like, you forgot, And if you just let's just slam this music into, and make it really loud, and that's going to be, it's like, oh yeah, but what about the peaks and valleys and the dynamics and the, so I don't know if that makes sense, that analogy, but it's just too much, man. Like, when you got to have, like, not so much all the time, because it's initially impressive, and then it's like watching somebody shred for like, that's the equivalent of super loud mastering. Just like watching sweep arpeggios for 45 seconds. You're like, wow, that's ridiculous. And then you're like, okay, I'm just want to hear some Pink Floyd now or something, because that's just overbearing. So watch that. Be careful with that. And then also just sonics, the guitar, as a mid-range instrument, can be a little, abrasive. So the guy that I go to for mastering, Ross Nyberg in Seattle, he's, I think he's kind of an old school dude. He doesn't like slamming stuff either. He's got a lot of nice analog gear, and he always makes my stuff sound louder and, mastered, finished, but also puts a nice sort of that analog just warm, he's got a nice thing with that, that is really nice for guitar music, because it's like, rock guitar can get a little, especially in the sort of the digital realm, can just be a little bit abrasive. So you want to keep it, nice to, you want people to be able to get through the whole record without being like, oh, I'm gonna put on something else, you know. Angus, that's some interesting info. I didn't know that. Tom Allam or Alam, co-producer on Firepower, not only produced some of the best Priest albums, was the recording engineer on the first Sabbath album. That's really cool. Makes sense. What a great idea. I mean, get this guy and then Andy to co-produce and like modern, and there's a mutual respect there and stuff. And boy, it sure worked on that record. That Priest record is a great metal hard rock record, you know, for sure. It's really cool. So I think it sounds great. Jar Jar ruined Star Wars. I mean, yeah, like I don't ever need to see that guy or whatever he is again. It was just silly, you know. It was like, but also it was just the onslaught of the visual. It was like too much, man. I mean, Star Wars was a great little story, you know. That was the magic of it. It was like you know, wrapped up in all this, the visuals and stuff, which blew our minds in 1978 or 79 or whatever. We've never seen anything like that, but it was a good movie too, with, you know, the dialogue and I don't know, it was cute and simple, but it was like endearing. So that to me is the dynamics, you know, of the of the movie. You know, if you squash out all the dynamics, just like mastering. 1977 says Bento. Is that when it was? 77. I always think 78 for some reason, but you know, maybe I didn't see it till 78 or something. I saw it in the theater though. Yeah. I have not watched a Star Wars movie since 1982. Well, I still enjoy them quite a bit, to be honest. I was a Star Wars kid, so that's interesting. There's a great video by Tom Weber, EVH's guitar tech, on why it's so difficult to tune a guitar. I would totally be down with watching that. You know, he obviously got deep inside Eddie's tuning thing with the B string and the, you know, tempered kind of tuning, and you know, that's cool. The Han, Luke, and Leia development is missing in a lot of movies these days. Yeah, it's still so important, you know, like to make those characters that last, and maybe you want to see a sequel and stuff and see what happens next and all that. It's totally true. It was magic stuff, man. So great. Yeah. Let's see. All right, what else are we talking about? I'm gonna try a hot mod in my 6-rate super bass. Daniel said it would be loud. Well, yeah, because you're adding an amplification stage where I think what's going to happen is you're going to open up the volume and that's going to get really loud, like pretty quick. But you get a good sound. It's just going to be loud. So what you might consider is, you know, maybe doing a reversible post-phase inverter master mod. You know, you can put it in like one of the speaker jacks in the back or something, and you can always take it out. But that'll allow you to shave off some of that, you know, just balance it out a little bit and still get some great sounds. And actually, I would definitely recommend doing that. I think a post-phase inverter master, you know, the proper one with a good pot, and do it in the back on a speaker jack. It's a good place for it anyway in the circuit, because you don't want to, I know, like for instance, that's why it's on the back on an SL68, because it's just better to be back there and not where stuff is on the board, that short wire runs and stuff, to just mount it in the back, right back there, and that'll I think then you've got something there, you know. But you know, 100-watt, well, I don't know if it's 100, I assume it's 100, but if it's a 100-watt Marshall and they're adding something that's going to bump gain into the front end, it's a little like having it's going to be a different sound because of where it comes in the circuit, but it'd be like having an always on clean boost kicking the front end of your Marshall so that you're getting like 12 dB more or something right when you crack it open. It's going to get loud. So they're loud anyway, though. It's like you can't turn up that amp without, you know, what do you do with one of those? Put it on 0.5 or something, and oh, I love my super bass like this. It's like nobody runs them like that. So, you know, they're beasts. That's just the way it is. Ethan Rick says Andy Sneap is the dude. Yeah, I seemed impressive, you know, to me, like the tones and stuff. I assume that it's a 50-50 kind of thing on that record, and, you know. Okay, what do we got here? Brexall, are you saying if I want to capture the raw sound of an amp on Quad Cortex, I should only use a Reactive load for best sound and not aux or tune notes? It's going to be just because of the load. Yeah, it's whether or not you will hear a difference, or whether or not, best is like, but the curves are the most accurate on the Sur and the Fryette. You're plugged into the reactive load. The amp thinks it's plugged into a speaker cabinet and it's responding as such, right? And then you're taking the line out of that reactive load, going to the quad cortex to catch that interaction and stuff. It's going to be the most accurate with the most accurate load to what you hear coming out of the cabinet. No, like I say, will you hear it? I don't know. It's going to be. I hear the difference between if I directly A/B the Sur, the aux, the two notes. To me, the Sur and the fractal load, the X load, sound identical when you listen to them back to back. And if you're loading with a speaker cabinet that is similar, like a Greenback loaded 412 or whatever, you can plug that in and it sounds really, 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 really close to that, right? When you go to the two notes or the aux, it's a little different, the way the amp responds to the load, just a little. So best, whatever, it just has a little bit of a different sound because of the way the amp is responding with the load. Still really good though. I always say, I kind of tell people it's like the final 10 or 15% if you're trying to get it exactly close to the way your amp responds to the cabinet. Hopefully that makes sense and it's helpful. You can still, I'm quite impressed with the Captor X. I tried one of those the other day, and Friedman tried it and he really likes it. He thought, this is simple. I can crank it. He had a small box cranked on his bench when I was seeing him try it, and headphones, and he thought, well, that sounds good. And he's like, yeah, that thing's pretty cool actually. So, it's a good device. I like Guillaume and what he does, and he's a good guy. He's a smart guy, they make a good product too. So, should I go now down to the, let's see here, end of the chat, see what you guys are talking about. What do you go to mics for guitar cabs? Oops. Stealth Parrot says he'd love to have a Birdland. I just missed this one. My go-to mics on the cab in the other room, I now have the 4050, which I've always wanted from Audio Technica, and it's brilliant sounding, great sounding mic. And it's 57. So I've gone to that. For many years, I was ribbon and a 57, still a great sound. Then I was 57 and a 421 for about the last year or so. Really good sound, classic sound. But when I got the 4050, it's like, all right, it's got this really big full range sound that sounds like a little more like the cabinet, as opposed to the mic sort of influencing that, and adding its curve. Dynamic mics, I mean, if you just look at the curve of a 57 or a 421 or something, it's like it's all over the place, where it's boosting and doing its thing and cutting, and they have a not very flat response, dynamic mics, whereas a condenser is pretty razor, like you can, so it stands to reason. It sounds like a big full range sound, 20 to 20, that is representing the speaker really well. Are you running 9.5s or 10s on your Strat? 9.5s, 9.5 to 44. At some point, I may just go to 9s. I don't know. We will see. But 9.5 I'm liking right now. Sad news about Stephen Piercy cancer diagnosis. Is it true? I just know what I've heard, which on the radio I heard that he went through treatment. He's doing quite well, is what I heard. That he's, seems to be successful, and but I'm just hearing what we're talking about on KLOS or something yesterday, 2 days ago, I heard. So I think it looks positive, Yeah. True World says, thanks for all you've done. Hey, thanks. You make perfect guitar voicings behind the most perfect voice ever. Thank you. Perfect harmony. I listen daily still for hours. Well, thank you. Appreciate that, man. Thanks for being here. I do appreciate it. Have you gotten an Aura yet? No, but one of these days. John, I do believe, finished all of them. So all the customers that are ordered them and stuff now, there was something he put aside for me. So but he's got a lot on his plate, so it's like he's got a few that he'll do over time, I think. And a long time ago he said, I'm going to make you one of these things, you know. I said, whenever, you know, he said, I love John, man. He's the best. So I went over there for dinner the other night, and his family is like my family, you know. They're so great. So we're tight friends, that is for sure. Do you know what the bias value is for the 6v6 and the PT15? I don't. That'd be a question for customer service. I would email cs@sir.com and ask them, you know, I'm just looking for, you know, to tell my tech, whatever. But, you know, a good tech should be able to sort that. You know, they should be able to figure it out. Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I've never done it myself. I'd like to learn how. The amp runs, by the way, John designed it to run fairly cool, like the way that it works the tubes, so that it's reliable, you know. So you're going to find that probably some flexibility there, bias setting, and also just like, you know, the tube should last a really long time and stuff in a PT15. He went kind of conservative with it, with all that in mind, you know. Tubes is such a crapshoot, you know, these days. It just makes it easier. What the hell did Lemmy play for his bass rig? Well, he had that head that, what does it say on the head? It had a name. Looked like a late 70s or mid 70s Marshall, you know, big logo. But I don't know what that amp was. Somebody look it up on the internet right now and tell us some info about Lemmy's bass amp. I remember seeing him with it at the, I saw him at the Roxy once. Actually, I played the same night. I remember with Steve Stevens and Matt Sorum and stuff. We did, it was a New Year's Eve, and I remember it was a Camp Freddy kind of thing at the Roxy, you know, all-star cover band thing. And I got up and played a Sabbath song and something else with them. And but Lemmy played that night, I remember, and he had that amp. I remember he just, that's his amp that he always used. So I remember seeing it sitting on stage going, holy shit, there's that amp. I can't remember what it said on it though. It's like, it had a name. Anyways, I think it was it a 4 input? I think it was a 4 input. Must have been like, maybe it was like a mid 70s or late 70s, you know, super bass spec. That's my memory of it. All right, I'm gonna take a look right now because it's killing me. I gotta know. Lemmy bass amp. Let me a picture of it pop up here. There it is. I think. Let's take a look. What a sound, though, right? Yeah, super bass. Oh, I guess he had a signature model. I didn't know that. They actually made it's a 1992 model Lemmy Kilminster super bass. And that was the amp. I see. It looks like he's got a repro of it here that says Murder One on it, but I don't think that's what his said on it. There's one that says Hammer on it. Anyway, Killer. Maybe that's what it said on it. Maybe he had a ton. But anyways, it's a super bass. He was a Marshall guy through and through. And a gnarly sound. Great sound. Great sound. Great sound. Hammer. I see a bunch of pictures of one says Hammer on the front. Well, he must have had lots of them. Anyway, okay. I got I should mention, while we're talking about bass, I got a bass because I've always wanted a 5-string because sometimes I play, you know, my baritone, my Dan Electro baritone. So check out my bass. I'm not like, I've always been a, you know, like I'm not a 5-string guy, generally speaking, but then I realized like when I got a baritone, I want to play low. I'm always playing bass on a 4-string bass, and then I'm like, so it's a P bass. With it's a 5-string P. Fender straight up American, you know, American Classic, I think they call it, or something. What's it say? It says right on American Professional. Sorry, Fender. Precision Bass 5. It's awesome. So I can get down to B now. So I used this on the Lumen video because of course I was like, okay, I got this thing now, I got to use it on something. So when you see the video for this, you'll hear my new 5-string on there. I don't show it in the video because I didn't do anything with the bass that required the pedal, but it's on there and it sounds killer. Really, really good. Preston says, I want a 5-string. Yeah, I never thought I would be a 5-string guy. And then I realized if I do anything with the baritone, if I do low tune stuff, or I want to play heavy, kind of got to have a 5-string. And I'm a P kind of person. So I'm a P kind of person. That sounded great. What an idiot. I'm a P bass kind of person, you know. Your inner Gene Simmons just came out. Totally. I just need the blood. All the blood, you know. Yeah. Okay, what else we got here? I got a Thornbucker on my Strandberg. What's the best way to use it? Shred. No, I don't know. I know they've been using those, haven't they? Which is awesome. We appreciate that. They buy their pickups from Sir. But thanks for checking it out, actually, and mentioning that. I appreciate it. But it's just a great PAF is what it is, and it should blend well. If you got a Strandberg with single coils, it should blend really nice with the singles, and you know, it shouldn't be like world of difference between the volumes on the pickups. Ben Tom says, as a guitarist, would you get a 4 or 5-string bass for people to come over and jam on? I mean, generally speaking, I would get a 4. I would just get a P bass, and around $1,000, find a nice P bass. No bass player is going to be unhappy with that. You know, I prefer P's to J's, just the pickups and the neck. Actually, I like the wide P neck. It's just really comfortable for a non-bass player, especially. But a P bass to me is like the, you know, Ford or Chevy truck of basses. It just gets the job done. It gets you from A to B. You can put stuff in the back. All right, that doesn't really apply to a bass guitar, but you know what I mean. It's just like the industry standard. You know, you can get the gig done on a good P bass no matter what. So it's hard to screw up with one of those. It's like a Telly. You know, it's just a good all-arounder. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Thanks, Travis, for chiming in here with this. The main amp Lemmy used was a customized 76 Marshall Super Bass known as Murder 1. Right. Super Bass was 100 watts loaded with EL34. So pretty much a straight up 100 watt Super Bass. That's cool. Great sound. Great sound. Bill says, thanks for my Atomic Overdrive review. That's a great pedal. That was a long time ago now, 10 years ago or something that pedal's been out. And it's a really, really good, you know, Marshall in a box. Likes to have the bright switch on the amp. I think I've mentioned that before. I did a video on how to use and how not to use distortions. I remember, and I used the Plexitone and the Atomic Overdrive as examples of pedals that like different amps to be plugged into. Now, of course, you can use it without a bright on, but it'll be a darker sound. It'll be a warmer situation, you know. And I found it sounded the most and a lot, really, like my PT 100's channel 2 going into channel 1 with the bright on. I thought it was one of the pedals that came closest to like the true sound of my signature amp, you know, set up that way. Yeah. Adrian Vandenberg plays Sir in all his Les Pauls. I wonder what model he uses. That's interesting. You know, also Doug Aldrich, right? Is the Thornbucker a good choice for Gibson SG bridge? Yeah, I mean, if you want it to sound authentically, you know, early 60s, in my opinion, I think it's an awesome choice. The set is a wonderful thing, you know, for a Les Paul or an SG. It's just a great sound. I got a set for Jamie Kime recently, who, you know, played with Weasel Zappa, and he's amazing. He's such a great guitar player, ridiculous guitar player. And he loves them. He put them in his Les Paul, and they're still in there. So they've been in there for, I think, 8 or 9 months now. So that is a good thing. Yeah. I have 6 Thornbuckers. I love them. That's awesome. And we continue to come up with things. So coming soon, you will see. Still working on stuff. I love them too, man. They're just really good pickups. Okay. So it's a JMP between a Plexi and a JCM. Yeah, essentially. I mean, when people say JMP Marshalls, they're kind of talking about metal panel 1969 through or 70 through, you know, when the JCM 800 showed up. And the funny thing is that it doesn't really mean anything other than kind of when the amp was made, because a lot of the circuits exist. Like, so there's JMPs that are still, you know, tag board or whatever, however they were made, whatever, hand wired, if you want to call them that. And then they went to the circuit boards in 73, but those are JMPs too, you know. And then like around 75 or whenever you start to see the master volume models, 2203 and 2204 show up through 80, and then the JCM 800s came out. But it was the same damn amp really as the, you know, but they also made JCM 800s in the 80s that had the super leads, the 4-hole version, right? Just like the late 60s plexis. Yes, there's some component changes and stuff that, you know, changed throughout the years, but it's just a little confusing. It's so when people say JMP, it's more like an era of a bunch of different models. Then we get into the 80s, the JCM 800s. That's an era of pretty much the same models. Like not a lot of stuff changed from say 1978 through 1981 or 2, you know. It was like they looked different. It was a cosmetic change, really. Yeah, sure, the way maybe, you know, Dave Friedman or John can tell you like the layout of like how things changed and stuff. But circuit wise, we got a lot of similarities going between these eras with the different amps. Now, when we get into the, say, the 2205, I think is the model that had the clean channel in the 80s, the kind of maybe not as desirable JCM 800 with had 2 channels. That's a different thing. JCM 900s, different thing, you know. All of a sudden they changed a lot, you know. And JCM 900 SLX, different thing, you know. But there sure is a hell of a lot of similarities between, you know, my point is between, you know, some of the amps that happened in the late 60s through, you know, even the mid 80s. You've got that 4-hole Marshall circuit that ran all the way through, super bass and super lead circuit that, you know, hope that makes sense. It's a little confusing, man. Marshalls are a little confusing with their, I mean, you know, just the fact that they called their amps things like 1959 and 1987. Why the hell did they use those numbers, you know? That's so confusing for people to hear. 1987 Marshall 50 watt. They think, oh, it was made in 1987 or 1950, because those are, you know, why did they pick that? They could have called it 2202 or something. That would have made more sense because people wouldn't equate it with a year, or, you know, so you're always explaining these things to people, right? It's a little nutty. It's a little nutty. JMP even had a solid state. Yeah, that wasn't very, in 76 and ran a few years, the thin 100 watt. I don't think, you know, that, oh, here's a, oh yeah, on a different no, whoops. Sorry, GMP has solid state. Where did that one go? There was a comment I just wanted to highlight, which was, how do you feel about, oh, there it is, 3203 Artist. Kind of neat. So I had the all solid state version of that amp. Was my real first, like it was my 3rd amp, but I consider it to be, you know, my first giggable thing, really, which was a MOSFET 100 Marshall head. It was loud enough to play with a band for sure. And it was basically a 2205 or whatever Marshall, but solid state MOSFET. The 3203 Artist was the same amp, I do believe, but with a tube power amp and solid state front end. Kind of cool. I know Rusty Anderson really liked those amps. He was a fan of those and used to get them. You know, I mean, your mileage may vary, but I kind of like, I've sort of almost bought a few times the Marshall MOSFET 100 again, just because I'm like, I had one of these when I was 16. It was pretty cool. Like, maybe I should get one. I'd probably get it now and hate it, but, you know, just, you know, they pop up every now and then for $300 or $400. I thought often about getting one. Kind of neat. It's nostalgia. But John in the super chat there, will the Illumine be an upgrade from the Immerse? Well, is it easy to do an edit? Yeah, it's really easy to edit. I figured it all out with no manual. It's a couple knobs. It's very, very simple. And the one thing I'll say is there's not a lot of parameters. So if you're looking for something that has a ton of tunable, you know, like things, but it just sounds great. So you've got the basic things you need there to get a good sound, and you can tweak them. Each algorithm, there's 17 of them, of the different reverbs, and sometimes reverb mixed with echo and stuff, 17 different algorithms. For each one, there's only 6 or 7 things you can tweak, which I like. I like that a lot. It's like really makes sense to me. Because it's just simple and they sound great. So why give people more to mess with? I really like their thinking when it comes to keeping it simple. The upgrade thing will be that you can store presets and easily flip between them. You know, you can have 50 presets on there. So you can have your spring, your plate, your big ambient wet thing, your delay mixed with wet, and your detune, and easily get from preset to preset and recall them via MIDI and stuff. So that's the difference with this thing to me. And it's still very small, you know. It's not, you know, it's tiny. So, yeah, I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Who's that? Michael says, how's your health? I recall there were some issues a few weeks back. You know, pretty good right now. In talking to my friend John Sir the other day, he was saying that I should probably take some, he was thinking maybe you've got like a reflex thing going on and that can affect, like cause kind of IBS symptoms and stuff like that. And I think I'm going to investigate that because I did have that recently, like a reflux thing that was kind of not great. And I took some over-the-counter acid reducer for about a week and it really got better and solved that. But I think I have I think I just have a little bit of that going on. At least I'm going to investigate that. Maybe take just some over-counter Prilosec or something for like a week or two and see how I feel. He had a similar thing a number of years ago, and he just said this solved all my. It was like night and day. So that makes sense to me. And I was emailing my doctor the other day about, and he did mention like, have you tried antacids? Like, and it's just kind of that's adding up to me. So, anyways, but I've been feeling pretty good. Thanks for asking. I really appreciate it. I've been feeling pretty good this week. Better, you know, not 100%, but my that's the thing that gets me is my, you know, my GI is like that's for years and years and years. You know, it just that's the slightly debilitating at times thing for me. And some good suggestions here: apple cider vinegar. That's one that I actually want to give a try too. I don't mind apple cider vinegar. I'm kind of weird. I like the taste of it. Actually, doesn't bother me. So I might give that a try as well. Yeah. Do I know anything about this amp, the Artiste 2040? I don't really. That would be a solid state thing, or maybe is that the one with the? Is that when they were doing the twin kind of thing, like the kind of, you know, the odd man out sort of Marshall head that they made that was really clean. I don't know much about that amp, to be honest. I know they kind of copied a twin in one of their amps at some point. Yeah. How about call your next pickup the ceramic? Oh God, that's pretty good. The ceramic. That's funny. I don't think so. I really appreciate ceramic pickups. I do, but I think I like to. I'm gonna stick with the Alnico and go the other way with it. But we are working on some different stuff, so it's fun. It's fun. What else we got here? Using Logic Space Designer to load Celestion on Hammer IRs. That does work. What would be better software for better workflow? I really like the Celestion's a good idea. If you're willing to go to the expense, you know, it's not inexpensive, but it works well, and the workflow is good with it. You can also just try something like, what are some good ones? The Get Good Drums Zilla is good for loading, and it comes with a whole bunch of IRs built in. I find it quite simple to use. The early version of it had some pops that were driving me a little bit nuts when I would turn it on and off, but I think they sorted all that out with software revisions and stuff. So I think it's fine now. So look at that. There's a lot of good IR loaders out there. There's another one from, is it STL? I think that has one that's pretty cool where you can load like a whole bunch of IRs and then you've got this ball in the middle and you can kind of move it around a square and it goes between them and you can mix them that way. It's kind of neat. I don't remember the name of it, but it was pretty cool. And then a lot of the software programs like Amplitude and, you know, I mean, you can even use like Helix Native has IR loader. And then you get all these other effects you can add, right? So that's kind of cool because you could add a stereo delay or any of the Line 6. You don't have to use the amp sims and stuff. So look at Helix Native too as being a cool option for different guitar sounds that you could use just as an IR loader, and then also add some reverbs and delays and different stuff. So there's a lot of options out there, and they all give you, like, with the Celestion, you can do the room thing. It's got, nice room mics and stuff that you can sort of blend into your, so there's a lot of different features for you to look at, is I guess what I'm getting at, and pick the way you want to go with an IR loader, what makes sense for you. Thank you, Orion. I appreciate that. Thank you. HX Effects has an IR loader. Yeah, we're more talking about plugins, I think. But yeah, the HX Effects. I mean, any of the Line 6 stuff work great as an IR loader, at least a 2048 IR, a 40 millisecond, which is fine for close mic stuff. Definitely. Yeah. Why no high watt? That's a great question. If a good one comes up, I will get one of these days. It's not out of any other, anything other than just, I just haven't had time or whatever. And also they're loud, and it's kind of a thing that's like, it's just sort of a, like an AC30 is a little more workable at different volumes and stuff, whereas a high watt is loud. That's when you hear a healthy one, it is a penetratingly loud thing. But of course, with load boxes and stuff, we got ways to work with them. So if a cool one comes up, I'd be down. I'd like a 50, a cool high watt 50, for like the classic, like whatever, the 4-hole, DR10 whatever, from 1973 or something. I would totally buy that. Desert Doug says coffee really messes up the stomach. I know, and I kind of, to be honest, I'm my own worst enemy with that, like, because I love coffee, and I probably coffee for the last 40 years or whatever, like daily as a thing, has not helped my long term, but now I'm going to counter it with some Prilosec. I don't know. I can't give up coffee. It's one of my favorite things in life. It's like, I really enjoy getting up in the morning and feeling like hell, and having the coffee and then feeling great 10 minutes later. Yeah. Okay. Which two bass amps do you use? Well, to be honest, I've got a few favorites. It depends on the sound I'm going for. A B15 is a beautiful thing. I used to own a beautiful, like 1963 B15, and I traded it to Black Market Music in LA for one of Kurt Cobain's Marshall cabinets. What was I thinking? It was one of Kurt Cobain's cabinets, though, and I probably could have sold that cabinet for a lot of money, like, if I'd kept it, but I didn't. I don't even remember what happened to that Marshall cabinet. I probably sold it for $300 to somebody. But anyways, it was one of those Music Bank Nirvana cabinets that they ended up, I think Courtney Love actually ended up selling them all to Black Market at some point, and then they sold them, and I bought it. So I traded a really great B15 for that, that I'd bought in the 90s. I was like, I don't need this bass amp. What do I need this bass amp? It's a classic bass amp. But anyways, that's one of my favorites. The UA B15, having said all that, gives me everything I could ever possibly ask for in a recorded B15 kind of tone, so it's like, it's an amazing plugin, really. So the UA B15, that's a terrific for warmth. Anything that's not like, even in rock contests, sometimes I pick it and it works great, but it's a warm, big, beautiful sound, SVT sometimes. I'm surprisingly, like, for a rock guy, I'm not as the SVT in UA. It's cool, but sometimes I have to work it more than I do the B15, like, to get it to do what I want. And I'll go another route because of that sometimes. And use, like, these days, it was something I'm really enjoying is the Dark Glass preamp bass plugin from Neural DSP. It's like they've got both of their Dark Glass pedals modeled in there, and they sound awesome for dirty. They've got a direct and then affected blend on there, so you can get some of the DI signal, and then there's also a cab sim, so you can act like you're kind of using that pedal through, like, I guess, a clean amp or something, and then it's doing the grind and cab sim with mics, and it just works great. Like, all the Neural DSP plugins are killer. So that's been a favorite of mine for rock bass tones too. And then I really like the GK 800 bass sim for kind of more modern, not distorted. If I want a clean bass sound that's really tight and modern sounding, but I don't want distortion, I'll use that GK. So I guess that's it for warmth, kind of earthy stuff. I'll go to the B15. For rock distortion kind of stuff, I'm using that Neural DSP dark glass plugin a lot. And then for modern, clean, or even anything 80s to, if I want to do something that maybe sounds like Billy Idol or something in the 80s, like, I'll probably go to that GK. I'm sure when I did the like Flesh for Fantasy, when I did the Boss Dimension D pedal, and I recreated Flesh for Fantasy and redid the drums and the bass and everything. I am sure I used the GK for that, that kind of bass tone. So it's really good. Yeah. I will say a great bass amp that I saw recently, Chris Chaney, who's an amazing bass player, Jane's Addiction, and it plays on a million sessions. He's an amazing musician. He played on my song Remember from my last solo album. He's a big fan of this Fender bass amp that is, I don't know what it is, but it's like, I think it's $500 or something. And it's like a tube front end. And I'm not saying this very well, but it's like looks like a 2-rack space kind of thing. And it's got a great dirty sound in it that you can blend with the clean and stuff. And he takes that to sessions all the time, and it's not expensive. I wish I knew the name of it, but maybe it's the Rumble bass or something like that. I can't remember. But anyway, that thing sounded really good to me too. But I'm not really a bass player, so What else we got here? I understand some people shy away from the power of a custom 100. Too much for some people. Well, it deafened Pete Townsend, right? Yeah, hi-fi. They are kind of hi-fi, like that upper. Man, are they loud? And the penetrating upper mids. You can feel your eardrums. That's it. When you're doing a little bit of damage. It's a great sound, but holy shit, is it loud? It's different than Marshall. Like 100-watt Marshall scares a lot of people, and that is nothing compared to that sound. To me, 100-watt Marshall's like you play it and you're like, holy shit, that's loud. And then you're like, after about 2 minutes, you're like, okay, but I'm comfortable, and it starts to sound not as loud after a few minutes. The high watt is just like, it's like a Sherman tank or something, It's just like you're gonna neuter yourself or something. It's a different kind of loud. Maybe it's just the punch, like it doesn't collapse or something. Wow, crazy. Yeah. What else we got here? Tim Horton, says John. He likes Tim Horton's coffee. There we go. What else you guys talking about? Vinegar. A lot of you talking about the vinegar thing. Vinegar balances stomach acid. Yeah, I might pick up some apple cider vinegar and try and do that every day. I think. Ben Tom says giving up coffee would be like giving up sex. Yeah, there's certain things. I mean, sex can be dangerous too. But you got to live your life to some degree, right? And a little coffee and a little bit of nookie. Never had a Hyatt. I've never had a Hyatt either. I want a Hyatt custom 100. That's like a nice hotel room suite. Replacement tubes for a PV Classic 30. So it's an EL84 12AX7 situation. I would probably go tested low noise Chinese 12AX7s, which you can still find if you look at places like the Tube Store or Doug's Tubes. And then I would probably just go with a set of Sovtech EL84s. Yeah. Not really a JJ guy when it comes to those. Go for the Sovtech. That's what I would do. I think Tad also sells some EL84s. I don't know what those. I think they're probably made in China, but I don't know much about those. But anyway, the good old Sovtechs. Go with those. Tested and all that, and you should be good. How much better are third-party IRs for Podgo than the preloaded ones? In my experience, it makes a big difference. It kind of like takes it into different device territory to me. That's not a slag on line 6. I mean, they kind of do their own thing, and people might love that thing. When I load Celestians in there, that's the sound I want to hear. And to me, like, oh, there it is, And I also did a test with the Pod Go and the Helix. I mean, a full-blown Helix rack that I've got in here, and it's the same. If you, for instance, you want a great dirty sound, on a Pod Go, use the Placator 100, which is like a BE 100, and load up a Celestion Greenback 412, 121, and 57 mix. High gain. Tell me it's not great. I mean, load it in there and that's a great dirty rock guitar sound, and doesn't sound the same as the ones that it comes with, all you got to do is just port those IRs in there and it's like, whoa, that sounds legit. Really. In all your touring, what has been your favorite on-stage moment? Wow, that's a great question, but it's hard to. I mean, I remember a lot of. I mean, like when I played at Fuji with Yoshi. I mean, like there's some amazing moments in that show, man. I mean, like there's 100,000 people and like the crowd at the end when the sun came up and you could really see everybody, and it was just like. And part of it that was amazing was I was in Japan. And I felt like I was like almost like an imposter, because here I am experiencing this kind of like, he's an artist that's legendary in Japan, but not a lot of American folks know about him. So, to go over there and be a part of that and be really an integral part of that experience felt like you're really lucky right now. This is like a once in a lifetime to get this kind of cultural thing in another country. So, and I remember he had run down off the stage and it's literally on the grass beside, and there's 100,000 people out in this place, and he's singing and he's running and he's pointing at the mountain. It's Fuji, and the sun had come up and the sun was coming over the mountain. He's pointing and he's covered in sweat, and he's just like, he's been going all night. I mean, we play all night. And I remember running down there and standing beside him and looking at him and just going like, this is a frigging trip right now. Like, this is something out of a dream. The crowd's all waving flags and going crazy. I mean, it was really interesting. So like, that's, some of the places that that music takes you, is an interesting one. How about this one? Here's an interesting one. Just set aside your political whatever for just a second and think about a kid from Canada coming to the US with dreams of playing guitar and, for a living or whatever, and just no money, and, living in a one-bedroom apartment, 3 guys or whatever. And then I find myself in 2011 on stage, not even playing, but setting up my gear, getting ready on the, I think, South lawn of the White House. And President Obama comes walking up to the stage and addresses me directly and says, "Hey, I just wanted to come over and say hi. I can't make your show here tomorrow, but I really appreciate you guys being here and playing. And I just wanted to introduce myself and say hello." Right to my face, I was just like, I didn't know what to say. I actually said, well, what a pleasure. That's what came out of my mouth. And he said, well, thanks. And he turned around and walked away. But that, set aside any political whatever you have, because it's not about that. It's about like, this 6 strings stretch across a piece of wood with like this thing got me to this point, That's like the most powerful guy in the Western world here, And he just addressed me and said hello and thanked me for coming over to play music. That was crazy. That was a moment where I was just like, I can't believe that, I took a picture as he was walking towards me, because I was like, oh my God, he's walking, like, is he coming over here? And I took a picture and I sent it to my mom, like, look what's happening right now, And then he starts talking. That's just a very strange experience, So that was one. And it was literally a sound check, There was nobody else on stage, Had the artist, I was playing with Colby Clay, a pop artist, had she been there at the time, I'm sure he would have spoken with her, because she's the singer, and it would have made sense for him. I'm just the hired guitar player, but I happened to be the dude standing at the front of the stage, and that happened. So that was pretty neat. It's a great memory. what else? Other moments on stage. I mean, being with Chris Cornell, there was like just a ton of them. I can remember being in once again setting your political whatever aside for a second, because everything's friggin' political these days. But I was in Israel playing with Chris to one of the bigger crowds that we would have played for at a solo Chris Cornell show. It was maybe 7,000 or 8,000 people. We played bigger. We played to 25,000 or 50,000 people sometimes, but it would be at festivals mainly for those shows. His own build show, we did a lot of theaters and that type of thing, more like even big clubs, to theaters and stuff. But this was like 7,000 or 8,000 people in Israel that came out to see him, because it's hard to get to Israel. So not a lot of bands get there to play. And so when people come, like, they really appreciate it and they come out and see you. So all the folks, I can remember they sang every word of every song, a little bit like South America. They knew all his solo stuff. And I remember playing the song Preaching the End of the World, and all the folks singing the song and just going, God, they're all singing, like they all know this song, which was like, one of his great solo. I love that song. It's a beautiful song. It's just such a beautiful song. If you never heard Preaching the End of the World, it's an amazing song. It's on Euphoria Morning, right? So check that out. But that was a great moment. Like, I just remember them. One of those moments where I was very present and watching all these people just singing and super happy, and like, they're playing music, and it's like this great, moment. It was just awesome. Also in Chile, lots of those moments playing at Santiago, where we had one of the bigger crowds. Once again, for solo, it was like 10,000 people solo show. It was so hot in that place, and we had such a good time. I remember that. It was blisteringly hot and amazing. Just the crowd was so there, and into it. But I can think of, I could write probably 40 of these down, on a piece of paper, the different moments. So it's been a great ride, It's been really fun. Hopefully it just continues. Anyways, thanks. That was a great question. I appreciate that. I do. And what else we got here? Music is truly a universal language. That's right. That's really it. It truly is. And those are examples where you find yourself in these different places and people just enjoying, the music. It's like for all of us, right? Whether you're in Japan or the White House or wherever the hell you are, it's like, it's supposed to be this cultural thing that pulls us all together, and maybe is a, an escape, but also like it's art. So it's a reflection, it's art reflecting life and all that. And it's just really cool, So, yeah. There's one. Todd says, Pete played guitar off with Tony McAlpine. Yeah, that was initially really stressful. The thought of doing any kind of guitar battle with Tony McAlpine. It's like, this guy's how am I gonna do this? He's gonna smoke my ass on guitar. So I had to come up with a way to make it fun and work, which I did, and I kind of went full on into a little bit more theatrics and Eddie Van Halen-isms and stuff that I just knew would work with a big crowd. And Tony did Tony, and I would kind of, I can remember like we're going like this to him, like he was on fire, while he's playing his legs and stuff, and we had a lot of fun with it. And then doing the Smoke on the Water thing at the end, you might see in some of the videos where we're playing the, the vocal part in harmony and stuff. It was really fun. Really, really fun. Yeah. Yeah. What else we got here? Let's see. Desert Doug says, I watched a documentary on Woodstock 99. I watched that too. I know it was a mess, but my God, was it bad? Do you mean the music was bad, or the show was bad, or just the documentary? You didn't think the documentary was good, or what do you mean? Just the show wasn't? I thought the documentary was pretty good, but it's anxiety provoking for sure. And you're just like, God, it made me, especially after like the whole like thing we've been through with like isolating and all that, and then seeing all those people like, in that like with the porta potties and the oh, you got, I'm not even going to get into it. It's like, Jesus, that looks like it's a wonder, I don't know. Worse stuff didn't happen, because it was crazy. But it's an interesting documentary. It's on HBO if you want to see it. It made me think. You know, not all festivals are the same in the organization. You know, they even draw the comparison with the early Coachella, where it was much more, you know, tuned in to maybe a good, you know, good experience for everybody there, and they weren't, you know, charging $4 for water and all that kind of stuff that happened at you know, Woodstock '99, which is just a mess. And you even see the, you know, the bullshit from the organizers, some of those guys, and what they said. I mean, when the one guy was, because, you know, there was a lot of like sexual assault and stuff like that happened at Woodstock '99, and the one organizer was like kind of doing that whole like, well, you know, when women dress like that, they're kind of asking for it, you know, that whole thing, which is just like, that's not like you. I don't care. Like, you probably shouldn't be, you know, you shouldn't be saying that in this day and age. We've evolved a little bit beyond that. You know what I mean? I would hope, you know. And he was going there, and it was like, oh, dude, like, you just kind of, I don't know. In my mind, it's like you sort of forfeit your, you know, it's like you shouldn't be organizing festivals, man, with that kind of mentality. He just seemed like he was passing the buck a lot to Fred Durst, and yeah, Fred Durst sort of did instigate, you know, some stuff, but it's like, yeah, dude, but you were the one, you know, setting the prices for the $4 water and having the, you know, inadequate, you know, sort of like, you know, situations for, you know, people taking showers and stuff like it was just like it's a bad setup. It's poorly organized. I see this stuff all the time when I go to, you know, festivals or shows, or, you know, some of them are better than others when it comes to, you know, you know, there's a way to do it and there's a way to not do it, right? Put a whole bunch of people together, you know, and I also found it interesting them talking about, you know, there was like 3 female artists on the bill, and that was it, and they were all sandwiched. You know, you got like Alanis Morissette, and then like, I don't know, it was like literally like Metallica and like Limp Bizkit and like you know, like who was thinking about the when they did the US Festival, which had its share of problems too, but you had your metal day and you had your new wave day and you had your, you know, all the different days, right? It was like, who thought about this lineup, you know? And you know, it's way smarter to at least have different areas like stages where, you know, and they do that, I guess, you know, in Coachella, I think it's a little more, but you know, you got your EDM scene over here and your whatever, and then maybe, you know, maybe there's different days and stuff with, you know, artists that make sense, you know. Anyway, organizationally, just kind of crazy. Michael says, finally got around to getting an Audio Technica 4050 so far. I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, it's great all around. If you gotta have one mic, it's a great choice. You know, it's not going to do what a 57 does, but it's a terrific choice for vocals. You know, using on a drum kit. I mean, you could do like one kick mic and that as an overhead and probably get a really cool drum sound, you know, usable, and great on guitars for sure. And you know, so yeah. All right, what else we got here? What else we got here? What's been my favorite gig with other artists and why? Do you mean like working for somebody, like as a sideman, or like playing with other bands? My favorite gig as a sideman, I'll always say was, I mean, I've got a lot of, I really appreciate all the people I've played with, but you know, Chris Cornell was for me the most in tune I felt with musically, as well as just on a experience basis. It was really, you know, that was, I felt at home, you know, where that's rare, you know. It was almost like, yeah, it was just where I felt like I'm really dialed into this gig, like musically, and having a great time. And I really, really loved that dude. So, you know, it was like he was a great friend, and you know, I felt I want to make music with this guy for a long time, and it didn't go on long enough, unfortunately. You know, got a few years, and I'm thankful for that, but I wish it had all happened more. And like I've said before, the last time I played with him, 2016, and did a full show, I was like, I'm better at this now. I want this to happen again. I'm so much better at this than I was back when we did 300 shows a few years ago, you know. I just was like, we got to do this again. And it never happened, you know. It's life. But Arthur says, I learned Jeff Beck stuff and never knew he, I think, had a trim. He is a guy. I have a mean shake. Like that, you mean? What did you take with you from your guitar inspirations? Well, for me, it's like, I'll say Eddie Van Halen for me. I've said this a few times recently, is about as technical as I ever really want to get. I don't really feel like my lot in life is to be I would have done it already, I guess, like be a super shredder, sweep picking master, any of that stuff. For me, I'm a songs guy, and I love great parts and great songs, and then I like short bursts of inspiring guitar playing, so that I think Eddie Van Halen really sort of personifies that to me. Those qualities, the beauty of a great riff and locking into a groove, Beautiful Girls, there's a song. Like, I could play that and just enjoy the hell out of myself, and then the beauty of writing something like that and stuff. That's what it's like. Yeah, that's what I want to do, really. Is that kind of, and behind a singer, generally, So even though I make guitar solo albums, that's always the most fun for me, is those kinds of collaborations. So yeah. Well, that's cool. Alan says that he's got a 50-watt combo with blackbacks. That's pretty neat. I wonder if they're blackback 30s, or did they use 25s? Interesting. Back in the day when recording guitar tracks, did you use effects or raw? Only pedals in front, really. Like if I was making records, never. If like the kind of effects that you would commit to, think about a Memory Man in front, like the Edge would use it, or an overdrive, or a univibe, or something like that, or a faux rotary thing or something, doing 2 amps in stereo, but generally effects in front. Nowadays, occasionally I'll print delay and stuff, but I've only been doing that for the last 6 years or something. Like, out of an aux or something. If I'm playing a solo and I've got a delay going and it sounds right to me and the mix is good, it's a bit of a commitment, but I'll just print it now. So some of the stuff you heard on like Pete Thorn 2 or whatever had, I was using the aux for certain sounds, and I would just print the effects, roll with it, just commit, but mostly in the past, not. I would say. Have you ever crossed paths with Dan Huff? Never. He was in Nashville, I think, since the 90s, wasn't he? And I just never met the guy. Great musician and producer and the whole 9 yards. Yeah. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. VS Audio Royal Flush is good for clean boosts. A cranked high gain Marshall 52 and 52. I don't know that particular pedal, but if it's a clean boost, generally speaking, a clean boost is never going to quite do what something like the 808 will do, for tightening, because they lop off a lot of low end. So a clean boost into the front end of an old, or a 5150 or even old Marshall or something is going to sound more looser. If you want the tightening thing, you kind of got to go with the 808. You could also look at that what's it called, precision drive from, Misha Mansour, that fellow that's got that prescription drive. It's basically like an 808 circuit, but with a tunable low cut. You could try that. That would be, a little bit more. If you want metal tight boosting and tightening and all that, plus the thing that they do with a bit more mids for aggression, I would go that route over a clean boost, honestly. Clean boost is just going to get louder, but into an amp like that, it's not going to give you metal, really. I don't know. You reach the point of diminishing returns. They've got so much gain anyway. I don't know if you even need that, the front end, honestly. El Scott Music says, what you just said there is exactly why I admire your playing. Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah, I just love you know, I love good songs and sparse playing. Jonathan, thanks. Haircut and glasses. These are cheap drugstore jobbies. Actually, I ordered some new glasses that are pretty cool. Like they're like aviators, but they're reading glasses. They're kind of blue. I can't wait to get those. But they're like 1.5 readers, you know, for my old ass. So I can see your comments clearly. Yeah. Looking forward to getting those. How much lower is a baritone guitar? You can tune it however you want, but most, I think, come kind of tuned to B. I think that's the standard. So it's, you know, you've got a low B there below your, you know, so you got another fifth of range down there to play with. Yeah. What else we got here, guys? What else we got? What time is it? 1:22. I'm gonna hang another half hour or so. Then I'll get some more work done. Bad Chisel says, great to see you today. Great to see you too. Thanks for being here. I do appreciate it. You guys and all your super chats and stuff. Please hit that like button if you're enjoying the show. Helps to distribute the video far and wide. And you know, trying to get more YouTube subscribers, which has slowed down a lot recently. It's interesting. I wonder if I just hit the peak of the amount of people that are interested in what I do, or guitar pedals and things like that. But maybe I need to, you know, do more. I don't know, start a cooking playlist or something. No, I don't know. Widen the appeal. You guys are all talking about Woodstock 99. I'm just reading some of the comments. It's a crazy, we're just talking about the, you know, it's on HBO. Check it out. Check out that documentary. It's interesting. Frosty says, Chris Cornell, When I'm Down is absolutely amazing. I agree. Such a great, you know, amazing, beautiful song. Beautiful song. We played that one. We did, which was always fun. Yeah. Okay, what else we got here? When you were playing with Chris, looks like you had 2 combos and a half stack. Were they getting signal all the time? No. So what I used to do, for 2007, I remember the amp I took to my audition was this right here. It was my Comet Concord. That's sitting right there in the rack. I took that to the audition, and probably with an attenuator, I think, because it's pretty loud. But I remember running that into a 412, and that's all I used at the audition, which were great. For once I had the gig, I got a RSA 31 from Divided by 13, and I was using the RSA 31 and the Comet. And then Yogi Yogi used to use AC 30, similar to the RSA 31, for his clean sounds. And then he ran a Fender Tone Master as his main kind of dirty amp. It's a pretty good sounding amp. And then he would use a Divided by 13 that he would kick on for solos, probably with either one of those, depending on the sound he was going for. So so I went, well, I've got to do that too if I'm the other guitar player. So I added what did I add? I don't remember, man. Actually, I had a third amp. I honestly can't remember for the first year, but I ended up doing some different things over 2007, 2008, where I'd have the RSA 31. That was a constant. Then I went to a 5150 the next year, the new 5153, which had just come out, and I used it on the Blue channel. That was it. And that was like my dirty rhythm sound. And then I think I moved the Comet to be my lead boost, but I could control it because I had an attenuator. I think I used a Comet air brake. So in other words, I'd have my clean, the RSA with an open back 212 cabinet. I'd have my dirty, which ended up being the 5150. And then when I would play a solo, I would kick in the Comet, and I could control the amount of boost I had with the attenuator, you know. But it was really just to get a volume bump, you know. So, and then I'd probably hit a pedal in front too sometimes to get a bit more gain to boost. I don't remember which one. I can't even remember. But anyways, that was what I used for the first 2 years. Now in 2009, and kind of for the last year and a half, I moved to the PT first incarnation of the PT100. John had come to me and said, "Why are you using all these amps and switching all this stuff? I can make you happy with one amp." And that sounded pretty good to me. So I tried, he did a 3-channel PT. It was originally an OD100, sort of it was the one that he called the Classic Plus, but he modified it to sound a bit more like what he thought I would like. And when I drove out to see him, he said, "I got an amp ready for you." And I drove out and he silkscreen PT100 on the front. I was like, "Oh, that's so cool," And then I started using it on the road, and people started saying, "What's this custom audio PT100 you've got? What's that amp?" And that's where the whole thing about the PT100 came from. It was really an accident. Had he never done that, had it just said Classic Plus on the front or something, I don't know if I ever would have had a signature amp. But he did it. Folks started asking about it, and they're like, "Well, maybe we should sell these as a model." So that's how it happened. And then it was just, the 3-channel PT100. And at that point, I'd also moved to a wet, dry, wet kind of thing. So it was a really complicated rig still, even though he'd slimmed down to that, and I used it like that with the wet, dry, wet and everything pretty much through the next couple of years of when I got the Don Henley gig, and then into playing with Melissa Etheridge. I used that wet, dry, wet rig for the first tour with her. And eventually, probably 2012, so 3 more years or something, 2012, I said, enough of this. I redid my pedal board. And then I went to 2 heads, 2 cabs with the effects in the effects loops of the amps, and got rid of the wet, dry, wet thing. So that's the way the rig progression went on. And then that's kind of still what I do now, is that sort of rig. No more wet, dry, wet. So in the beginning, in the early days, all the effects were in front with Chris. I just ran everything to the front of the amps. So even though I was doing the kind of complicated 3-amp thing and switching things in and out, it was simple in the regard that I had nothing going in loops or any kind of post effects or anything like that. So I just found delays that worked in front and stuff. And to be honest, it sounded really great, running it like that, like some of I saw a show from 2007. I posted it on YouTube. Actually, you can see it in my YouTube posts, which I don't do often, but every now and then I put up something on there. And in the YouTube post, I found a recent Pro Shot video from Detroit in 2007 of us playing Jesus Christ Pose, I think. And you can hear the rig in that. That was that early 2007 rig. And it sounds good to me. Somebody's up there in the super chat, and it's Alex. And Alex, thanks, Alex. Alex is just saying, "Hey, thanks, appreciate that. I do." What do we got here? Watch the rack show from previous Tone Talk. I have a Mesa V-twin rack, ultra noisy lead channel. I would try different tubes. That's where the noise is coming from. So you could try some tested low noise, talk to Doug's Tubes or something, maybe contact them and say, "I've got this issue, and what would you suggest?" And maybe he would go through and select one for you. But a low noise, because, a tube can make noise, hiss and stuff, so beyond that, there's not a lot you can do, maybe other than a gate or something. You could try a lower gain tube, but that's just going to drop the gain a bit, and then you're going to want to turn it up more. I mean, you could try like an AT7 or something in it, and it'll be quieter, but also a little lower gain. So just depends what you're plugging into too. Like if you're running that V-twin in front of an already kind of maybe slightly amped up, it's levels of noise. Yeah, as you add every single preamp stage you add, you're going to add a little bit of stuff, to the signal. So something to keep in mind. Yeah. What else we got here? Guitar Craig says, "I subscribe." Thank you for subscribing, man. I appreciate you being here. I do. That's all we can ask. Us YouTubers. I guess I'm a YouTuber. What else we got here? Let's see. What would you say one of the main lead differences between using tonal difference, between using the Hot Mod V2 to boost a Marshall as opposed to a tube screamer? It just comes at a different place in the circuit, and it's not the same. A tube screamer is still a pedal in front. It gets the sound of the pedal kind of gets masked by the tube stage is the amp, but you're kicking the input stage. Whereas with this thing, you're running a high voltage, 250 volts or whatever the hell, tube stage in the amplifier. And it sounds more like a mod than a pedal. It sounds like a mod is what it sounds like, a gain mod to an amp. I don't know how to describe that other than there's a sound that doesn't sound like a. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, when all the little things that pedals do, like when you go up around the 12th fret on the low E string, especially on the neck pickup, and it kind of goes home. That sound with a pedal that doesn't have a ton of headroom, doesn't do any of that. Or, not that that's a bad thing. You might like that sound, it's a different sound. So it feels more like it's part of the amp circuit because it is, whereas a pedal is it's just a different thing. The pedal also will kind of introduce more of a mid boost tonal stamp on the sound, whereas this sort of just feels like your amp, but with a little bit of this, a little more juice in the somewhere in the preamp, and it doesn't really change the tone, I would say, other than attenuating some bass, which is good in a 2203 or 2204 circuit, because to me they're kind of flubby. You can hear it in my video where I play the thing, and you can hear when I turn the gain up, and it's like this. I always hated that thing about JCM 800s and the late 70s 2203 and 2204. It gets alleviated somewhat when you turn the gain down, and then when you bring the master up, and if you can do that, but that's not feasible for a lot of people because of the volume. So a lot of people end up with this kind of that. It's just a kind of you can change it. Dave always says, well, it's one coupling cap or whatever in the front end. You can tune a 2203 or 2204 to be a much better sound by just attenuating some of that bass, I think, in the front end. But somehow on this thing, they've done it in the circuit itself. The way that he talks about it a little bit, like the original Soldano version of one of these, the Hot Mod or whatever it was called when it was Soldano, had more bass. And he's gone through and kind of, they've tweaked the circuit in order to do that. And you've got the bass switch on there, which to me, when it's in its more bassy position, sounds like too much. So I like it in the cut. Bass in the front end of a Dirty Marshall is the enemy of tight generally, but it's a fine line, cutting the right amount of bass. If you cut too much, your single notes end up sounding thin. But if, even when that happens, chords can sound really good. Because, the more notes you play, the more fullness there is. So it's this balance of like, not cutting too much, but, somehow in this device, that's the thing that they struck this balance with it where I'm like, this makes, not only does it add gain, but it fixes that low end thing that I never really liked that much in a way that's really cool, Philip says, hi, I love you. I love you too, Philip. I do. How do you use effects loop on a guitar rig? Well, generally speaking, what do you guys think? The main thing an effects loop is for is time-based effects like delay, reverb, pitch, chorus, rotary, things like that can sound really good in an effects loop. Not generally speaking, distortion, overdrive, things like that, fuzz. Those things go in front, and the effects loop comes after the distortion generating preamp section of the amplifier. And that's where you want to put time-based effects that generally you want to keep a little bit more clean. That's the hard and fast rule, but there ain't no rules. So sometimes those reverbs and delays and things can sound good going into the front of the amp. Distortion, if you want a kind of crazy, blatty, splatty sound or something, which is occasionally, just depends. I still like tape delay into the front of a dirty amp. That's Eddie Van Halen early days. There is a super chat up there. Legendary Tones. What's up? There's the designer himself of this thing. What are your favorite modern production tubes for using V1 and V2 cathode follower? Okay, so I'm a big fan, generally speaking, modern production, Chinese 12AX7s. If they're tested in low noise, they're just the best, for me. But there's another great tube from JJ that's out right now. You're going to find it's a little more expensive. I hate the JJ ECC 83. I don't like that tube. The E83CC, however, if that's not confusing, it's kind of a copy of, I think, the old short plate Tesla. So check out the new E83CC and tell me that thing doesn't sound good. That's a really good sounding tube. Lots of gain, open top end, sounds really nice. Who knows if they'll last, if it'll be like they'll all be crappy over, because JJs are just, they can last for 3 years. Oh, they're so consistent. They're great. And then all of a sudden you get a batch. What happened? These don't work. frustrating. But yeah, that E83cc, real good. Also, the 7025 from EH. I don't know if it works in cathode fall or long term. I know somebody recently that said they had a problem with an EH in, what amp was it in? Oh, I believe it's the Ombre, that John Sir doesn't like the EH in an Ombre. I think it was something to do with one of the slots, and it might be V2, where it was creating some issues with when you turned the volume all the way up, it would make this weird sound. And then he ended up replacing it with a tested Chinese, and it fixed it. And he was thinking that because of that certain tremolo circuit in that amp, that there was some crosstalk between the one side works as an oscillator or something, the other one's amplification, and then they can talk to each other a little bit. And it was something to do with the tremolo, and it didn't work. So anyway, that's going to be a very probably limited amount of people that need to worry about that. But you know, I guess long story short is some of these tubes work well in some circuits and some not in others. I'm a big fan of the LPS Sovtech in the phase inverter, long plate, tested, low noise LPS and phase inverter. That's a really nice tube. So I would say Chinese 12AX7, EH7025, the JJ E83cc, very nice tube, and the Sovtech LPS 12AX7. They're some of my favorites. Yep. Do you own any Friedman guitars or amps? You know what? I don't really. I don't own any Friedman guitars. I've had some Friedman amps. I had the number 2 Marcia ever made, which is the precursor to the BE. The number 2 after Dave's first one. I never should have sold it. Cool amp to have. But I have a number of things that are worked on by Dave. And for example, my Germino there was heavily modified by Dave. My Marshall there has been gone through by Dave and worked on. This top hat right here, modified by Dave to have a tone control defeat on channel 1. So he works on a lot of my stuff. And sometimes I actually feel bad that I don't have one of his amps, because he's one of my best friends. And I'm kind of covered in, I guess what it is that there's a lot of crossover between, say, a PT100 and a BE100. There's similar designs, in a lot of ways. You've got a nice clean channel, you got great Marshall drive channels. So I sort of got it covered, in other amps that I have, because he's mainly that Marshall guy. The one amp I would like to have of his that I don't is probably the small box. I think that's a really, and it's kind of his favorite, I think, too. I don't want to quote or put words in his mouth, but that amp does everything to me. A small box 50 has a great plexi channel and a great BE, kind of your mod channel and your straight up plexi channel. Really nice amp. So, it's more, I would just say, out of there being redundancy between the designs, because they're kind of, there's a lot of similarities between something like the PT50 and the PT100 and the amps that he makes. So that's it. Paul says the Dirty Shirley, also a really, really nice amp. I agree. I think if I only had one, though, I would go with the small box just for me. But I agree, the Dirty Shirley is a great amp. Really terrific sounding. Yeah. Matt here from Guitar Smarts podcast. What's up? What's your advice for increasing right-hand picking speed when it feels you can't get faster? The metronome. And probably the Paul Gilbert Progressive Rock 1, or is it Progressive Rock? Intense Rock. That's what it's called. Intense Rock 1, I think was what it was called. Watch that video and just do his alternate picking exercises with a metronome. That's it. And one thing that I took to heart wasn't just the exercises, but it was how he was executing them with very minimal motion, And I really watched his picking hand. I was like, okay, he's barely moving. And I started lightening up with the pick and just touching the end of the string. So like if I was to, I even have a picture in here. There's one. If I was to demonstrate that, if I'm playing slow, I'll have more, you can see my hand, more motion, right? But as I go faster, I tend to, can you even hear, So just the very tip of the pick touching the string was what I sort of saw from Paul. was minimal motion, and also in his left hand, incredible efficiency. You see it with Yngwie too, and any good fast player that's very clean. Yngwie looks like he's barely doing anything with his right hand, right? He looks like this when he's playing. He's flying all over the place, but his hand is barely moving, you know? So it's so efficient. So that's the thing you got to get with a metronome. So you almost need to lighten up the faster you get. You have to actively think about lightening up and using a metronome and practice that way. There's examples of folks that don't do that, you know, that are more, they look more wild when they play fast, but to me, they never have the, when I think about the guys that really have that shit together, like Paul, you know, he's so efficient, you know, amazing when it comes to that stuff. So that's it. Scott says, yeah, you got to relax. Yeah, that's it, really. That's pretty much it, you know. My mind won't let me go past 90 p.m. Well, your mind is maybe, keep in mind, I'm tough loving you right now. Keep in mind that your mind is limiting you by thinking that way, you know? So it's amazing what you can do with a metronome, you know, and just playing with a metronome and watching somebody like Paul and literally just go up one step a day if you're working on some exercise or whatever. And I don't know, I think anybody can kind of learn how to play fast. To me, fast came easy, pretty easy. When I was 17, I could play as fast as I can now, you know, fast. I couldn't play as good. I could play as fast, cleanly, you know, because I watched his video, Steve Morse. Vinnie Moore was another one. He had this great video for learning how to play fast, doing like triplet kind of exercises up one string. Cut me some slack because I'm not warmed up, but things like that, like moving up and down one string. Right? And then like Greg Howe was another one. He had this like, right? Or, whoops. So I would work with that shit for, you know, I would just sit there like, and I was like, okay, I'm sort of like just like a monkey sitting here, like, you know, you could show a chimpanzee how to do this, you know. I felt like I would sit there and do that when I was like 17 to a metronome. I probably drove my parents insane, you know. But it came fast. It came really easy. Playing good phrasing and interesting lines and stuff, that is like, it's like a whole nother world, you know. So just, and you notice I was doing the light thing, like very light, very, you know, barely picking, you know, thing. So yeah, I don't know, everybody's different, but have you ever used the Beat Buddy pedal for practicing? I did a demo for it, not really for practicing. I'll just turn on beats within Logic and stuff if I'm using drums to play too. Generally, you know, my practice these days is like probably learning material for gigs or writing, which you see me do all the time. And I'll put on a section and loop it if I'm trying to come up with a lead part. So I'm playing over drums and bass and stuff like that and looping to come up with a melody or a lead part or whatever to play on top. That's like practicing, I guess, but I'm also sort of formulating ideas, you know. Travis Barra says, drink 20 cups of coffee before practice. Yeah, the tried and true, the metronome is tried and true. It works. That's the key, really, to building speed and articulation and stuff like that, is definitely the metronome. Yeah. Okay. What else we got here? You have a great string skipping exercise video that's very good. Thanks. Yeah, that was that arpeggios video, right? I can remember working on that like recently, and it was kind of a Paul Gilbert sort of inspired thing. I don't remember what I called it, but I called it, you know, if you look under my name, if you search on YouTube, Pete Thorn arpeggios, it'll pop up. It's like the only one. And I had some etude or something that I turned into a thing that was, and that's very Paul influenced, you know, because really he had his early videos as far as me building technique. I couldn't really, I do a little sweep picking, but I'm like him. He doesn't really sweep pick that much, you know. His techniques made more sense to me than almost anybody as far as technical speed stuff. Also, Steve Morse and Vinny, they were alternate pickers, and it was like, okay, I can do that. This Frank Gambale stuff, I'm having a problem. Like I'd work for a month on, he had that video where it was the lick that ate LA or something was in it. When he's got the yellow guitar, and I tried to work on that. It was like really hard for me to get that. And I was talking with somebody about it. I was talking to Warren DeMartini about this actually. We were talking about some crazy technical guitar players, and I was mentioning that when the pick comes down for me, that's when my foot comes down. Like when I'm da 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 da. That made sense to me, right? Da 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 da, or da da da, whatever. Like that's when my hand comes down. That's when I'm feeling the beat. Well, a lot of sweep picking, that's just not. If you're going to make a cross to another string, you're going to go in the same direction, no matter what the downbeat is doing or whatever. And that was really hard for me to and you see Yngwie play like that in different people. They're not constrained by that thing. They are constrained, however, when they want to, whatever, he can probably do anything. But like, I know Frank's thing was like, if you want to go to the next string, the pick has to be going that direction. So what if you just did an upstroke, but now you want to play a note on the B string from the G? You can't, but it sort of seemed to me with his thing that was the thing. Yeah, the pick's got to be going in the right direction to move to the next string. So you kind of design your lines around that. I always have a hard time with that and the rhythmic thing of wanting to, my head's going down, my foot's going down, my hand is going down at the same time, and then going up on the upbeat. So that's just me. Dave knew. And once again, this all kind of combining with like how much does any of this shit really matter if I'm not playing a good song? Like the song is the thing, and all this stuff is kind of like, it's all like, does any of this have anything to do with anything? If like it's just the guitar solo or whatever, it's a component of the music. That's the way I always felt about it. And with Eddie Van Halen or whatever, it was always some great guitar playing, but wrapped up in a really fun song with also great, fun vocals and all that stuff. And that was more important to me. So that's just me, yeah, everybody's different though. Yeah, thanks, Dave, for the super chat. The lick that slurped LA. I thought it was called the lick that ate LA, but it might be the lick that slurped LA. Yeah. Lick of the week, says Lauren. A lesson thing. It's a good idea. I agree. That is a good idea. Paul says the Ibanez Saber. Yeah, the Saber. That was the guitar that he played back then. I remember that. Yep. Yeah. Arch says, in my opinion, sweep picking is pretty useless. I mean, it's amazing for doing that incredible shit, that's, but I don't know. I don't, yeah. Paul Gilbert mastered the foot count thing. Paul had this great thing, that I really appreciated. That was like, you play a rhythm and then you go to a lead, and then you play a rhythm. So 2 bars of rhythm, 2 bars of lead. So like, Jailbreak, right? And back to the rhythm, right? And then you just improvise whatever. And I'm just singing in my head probably what I would have played on the guitar, right? And by coming back to the rhythm every 2 bars or whatever, and then going to the lead, you're sort of solidifying that, and then your licks, his licks are the purposeful kind of rhythmic quality of his licks, that always resonated with me, because even when they were really fast, you could hear the groove in them, the pulse, Now that one guy that can do that stuff and have that pulse running all the way through, but doesn't necessarily conform to this pick stuff that I was talking about, because he can do the sweep thing, is Rick Graham. That guy, I've never heard anybody with such articulation in his licks, where he can be playing at a blistering speed, but I can hear the pulse the whole time. And he doesn't conform to this alternate picking thing because he's superhuman. So it's his playing to me is so interesting, because he's the one guy I can watch that's got this technical stuff down, like really down, but I still find it very musical. Like he's a true virtuoso in that way, where he's playing sometimes some just absolutely insane stuff on the guitar, but I still like to listen to it. My ear is still drawn to it. He's a bit of an anomaly for me because I don't find that with most players. I tune out after a minute, but with him, I'm fascinated. He's pretty mind-blowing and a really sweet dude too. Yeah. Yeah. What else we got here? How did you dial clean crunch lead tones in terms of volume and drive between them? Sorry, between which? Are you talking about my... sorry, I'm not sure if you're talking about my old rig I was talking about earlier or not. I'd love to answer that though. Let me know down below, Francisco. I should go soon, guys, but this is fun, so I'm hanging for a minute. Ampy question: what's the best way to put delay reverb on a cranked on master volume amp in a live situation? Mic the amp and put the effect on the mic signal. You can do that. I would probably wet dry wet it. That's the old Steve Stevens, Eddie Van Halen way, you know. So you take a line out box and you take a tap off the signal from the amp. You can use one of these. So the output of the amp goes in here, and then the speaker through goes through to your cabinet, right? And then you've got this pot right here. This sends a line out signal out of this 1/4 inch out. You can run that straight into, let's say, a delay or delay and reverb combo. You could use this thing, right? Go straight in, and then either come mono out of that or stereo into your effects, into your, you know, like a. And this will work great actually for this because this has an analog dry path, so you can actually use it to mix in the effects and still get some dry in your cabinet. Now you take the output out of this, plug it into a power amp and a speaker cabinet, and now you've got your wet effects with your old Marshall, you know, non-master amp, whatever kind. But in the dry cabinet, you'll just have your dry sound. The second one, when you could use a matrix power amp or some kind of class D power amp or whatever, you know, some kind of power amp. They all sound a little different. So, you know, one of those Seymour Duncan things, or you could go in the effect return of a Marshall with an effect loop or something, or a tube power amp, whatever you want. Your mileage may vary. And then go into a speaker cabinet and then just turn it up. Now you got your delay or whatever in the other cabinet. That's the rock and roll kind of way to do it. The little bit more hi-fi kind of studio guy way would be to mic the amp, take that mic signal, run it into a mixer with effect sends on it with your stuff in a rack or whatever. That's the old Landau way, you know. And then you know, yeah, there's different ways you can do that too. Then you can have like powered speakers. Like I used to see Larry Carlton, or I think Eric Johnson for a little while had like JBL monitors, you know, and that would just have the effect signal in it. Probably took a line out to the PA too or something. I don't know, but it gets complicated that way. To me, the kind of the Steve Stevens, Eddie Van Halen, very rock and roll, just have another power amp and some speakers, guitar speakers, you know, in guitar cabinets with the effects mixed in with maybe a bit of the dry mixed in too. And then your center dry cabinet, only dry. And then you mic all those cabinets and then just have them about at the same level. That's the classic wet. That's what I did too, you know. That's when I was doing wet, dry, wet. Yeah. Yeah. Doug's got to go. Doug's taking off. See you, Doug. Thanks for being here, man. Come back next week. See you next time. Let's see. Do you know of any pedal changer thing for multiple pedals that's analog? I mean, there's lots of them out there. There's a ton that have a pure analog signal path. I mean, my Musicom is all analog signal path. There's some digital stuff in there to do MIDI to change, but if you're multiple pedals that's analog, I mean, you're going to have a digital component to them no matter what. That's not in the analog signal path, right? So the digital component is just to store presets and combinations of the pedals, right? So something like the simplest would be the Boss ES3 that gives you 3 loops, and it's got effects built in. Although maybe that's beyond. Maybe you want to look at a simple RJM or a simple Musicom Lab or like the Crocodile Tail or like the different ones that have it's just loops. And then you can store combinations of those loops as presets. It's got an input and an output that's going to go to the amp, and then a bunch of sends and returns for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the different loops that you'll patch your pedals into. And the only digital stuff that's going on is just to store your presets and combinations of those pedals. So look at RJM. Look at I'm gonna find one for you right now so I can recommend something. Musicom Lab, RJM, RJM electronics. Let's find a couple here. Okay, there's one called the PBC6X. RJM Music PBC6X. That looks like a very simple, maybe 6-loop switcher. There's also PBC10. That's a 10-loop switcher. Okay, so there's a couple that you can look at. RJM Mastermind. That's a couple. Let's look at Musicom Lab and see what those are called. Musicom Lab. They make simple ones. They make bigger ones, like what I have. Okay, their simple one is called the Effects ME audio controller and MIDI pedal. I think that's what it is. I think that's Looper. Effects LE too. They make one called Musicom Lab EFX-LE. These are simple things that just have loops in them for your pedals, And yes, there's digital control, but not over. It's nothing to do with audio. I think they make an even simpler one. Effects Lite 6M. They may make some of these now still, and some other ones they don't. But go to their website and you'll see. The old ones that you could probably find quite inexpensive, like the FX Mark III, EFX Mark III, Musicom Lab, they had an EFX Mark II. These were good products too that were very simple, and they had a very simple numeric display without the full, just a numeric display. They didn't have the full characters or whatever you call the digital displays, So Musicom Lab makes some great stuff. Anybody seen this? I've just seen it on the webpage here. Have you seen this parallelizer? That is a great way to use something like this to get your line out signal and then send that line out signal into the parallelizer. It's got 3 stereo loops with individual sends and then 3 foot switches so you can turn on and off each of the loops. So you could have a Strymon reverb and a Strymon delay and a Eventide H9 or something like that. And you can have them all set kill dry, 100% wet, and the parallelizer will be have your mixes and then your on-off switches, and it allows you to run multiple different types of effects in a wet-dry setup on a pedal board. Very, very cool. You used to only be able to do that with rack, like Rain mixers, Rain, or the different. What's the other one? The Ashley. Ashley mixers or Rain mixers, a line mixer that would have, separate, sends, like almost like a studio style mixer that had sends for your effects with multiple, send 1, send 2 with multiple returns. That's what the parallelizer is, but it's for pedal boards. Pretty amazing. Yep. When you use the Helix, what amp model were you using the most? Well, I still use it from time to time. And the Helix model for clean, I use the Lone Star Channel 1. Kind of like a Fendry, the Mesa Lone Star. They call it something else, California TX something or other. I can't remember, but it's the Lone Star one. And the Placator 100, I think it's called, right? Which is the BE 100. That's my main clean dirty in there. That sounds, like the closest I can get to my PT 100 sort of channel 1 and 2 sounds. That worked really well for me to kind of mimic those sounds in a modeling context. Guitar Electric is saying check out Carl Martin stuff. They make pedal switchers too. I did recently the Octa Switch. That's a simple. You can store 8 different combinations of your pedals. Very easy. There's no MIDI at all. So yeah, it's a good suggestion. Actually, if you don't want anything digital, there's actually nothing digital in the Carl Martin, because they don't do MIDI. They don't do digital, that company. It's kind of interesting. Carl Martin's like strictly analog. They don't want to have anything to do with with any of that stuff. Ace says you are a class act genius. Thank you, sir. I got a tiger on my shirt today. He's a ghost tiger. I don't know why I just saw that. I saw the tiger. Thanks, man. Thanks, Ace. Thank you for being here and hanging out with me. I appreciate it. The Boss ES5, that's another good choice. I think the ES stuff has effects in it though, which is why I kind of wasn't. They're great. They've got a lot of the Boss effects built in, and to be honest, you get an ES3. I know Dave Friedman feels this way because he's put together a couple of rigs with the ES3s, and he's like, once you get that thing and like you plug into it and then come out of it in an amp, now you're like, okay, I want to add some pedals, but oh wait, it's already got a vibrato in there. Oh, that works really well. Oh, it's got a delay in there. Well, that sounds good too. So that thing is almost like it's a multi effect with 3 loops in it. Really, not dissimilar to maybe like if you're using an HX effects or something. It's like a Boss multi effect that happens to have a few loops in it and switching capability. It's kind of interesting. It is pretty great. I've wanted for a long time to actually build a little Boss ES3 tiny rig. And then part of me thinks I'm going to get that. I'm going to find that I could probably do just about everything I need to do with that thing, so. Yeah. There's a super chat up there. I'm going to grab that in just a second here. A lot of you guys have loopers and you're recommending the PBC 10. Zachary says the RJM OC10. I don't know that one, but Gig Rig, which are really good too. Expensive, yes, but good. Gig rig stuff. So I should have mentioned Daniel. He makes great stuff as well. Didn't you just do a video on the Carl Martin? Well, I don't know about just. It was probably 9 months ago, but yeah, I did on maybe 6 months ago. I did do a video of it. I just spaced on it, but it's a good option. The Octa switch. Some people think it's kind of like, oh, that's a little 10 years ago, but for certain people, they don't want any of they don't want more than what it does. So I appreciate that. Then that's kind of what they that's their thing. We want to stay analog and simple. I think that's good. Keith says, where's your journey landed with the Quad Cortex? I'm still using it and really enjoying it. And like a lot of people, sort of waiting for more updates. I wish it had an analog mod delay in it, for instance, a few other things. But for what it does, I think it's really great. It's terrific. And I might thinking of using it maybe for some upcoming stuff that I've got coming. So we'll see. I haven't quite decided. Do I go direct? It's some live stuff that I might do. And I haven't decided if I go direct or if I use a capture of an amp and then run into a power amp and cabinets, maybe rented amps and cabinet. Which way do I go with it? Option anxiety. I don't know. We'll figure it out. In a recording session, would you recommend using effects pre or post mix? I'd recommend for most people, the recording engineers and mix engineers and stuff, they want to have the capability of doing the effects themselves later, adding delay and reverb and stuff. Most mix engineers will want that, so I generally leave that stuff, long tail digital delays and stuff like that. They let them do that stuff like on solos. But if you've got a part that's, the inherent kind of sound is dependent on the effect. A slap delay, like a tape style slap, or a spring reverb on a Fender E amp that you're going to want to print. So we got a few super chats here. There's Gregory. Thanks for what you do. Thank you, Gregory. Thanks for being here every Sunday. Please come back. I'll be here. There's DKC 51342. Just installed a set of Thornbuckers in my garage. Nice guitars. They sound amazing. Do you have a recommendation for a good starting point for height? I do the bridge on the medium high side, and then I sort of set the neck tonally by listening to the clean channel of an amp and just adjusting it. Generally speaking, my bass side angles down a little bit. Now I don't have an exact measurement or anything. I just go by my ear, but I'll just listen. There's a great Joe Walsh video where he's doing this, and he's talking about how to kind of set, like, I think it might be on a Les Paul. That's basically, if you watch that Joe video, if you can find it on YouTube, that's kind of what I do. I just listen generally with a clean sound because it's not compressed and affecting the volumes of the pickups. You want to listen with pretty much a clean sound, and then maybe, compare it and listen to a dirty sound just to check. But I'll have the pickup set up so that sounds good to me. I'll kind of set the bridge where I like it, and then I'll go to the neck and I'll switch, and then I'll listen. If the bass, sounds all of a sudden bloated, I'll drop the next side, or if the whole thing sounds loud compared to the bridge pickup, we'll bring the whole pickup down. And generally I'm angling the bass side down lower than the treble side because the strings are bigger and there's more energy coming off of them, and I just balance the volume so that in, say, on a Les Paul, all 3 positions are about equal, and then generally you then you're like golden as far as like switching from pickup to pickup and all the different positions. And the Thornbuckers you're gonna find, I think, balanced just beautifully. Like you're gonna get a great sound on your amp, set it up so it sounds really good on either the neck or the bridge pickup, and you're gonna find you can switch to all three positions, and it's gonna sound great. Like, oh, the neck's too bright, or none of that. So my Marshall doesn't have an effects send. Is there a way around that? Yes. Oh, you mean like adding a loop? I kind of wonder if your question is, can you, like, maybe it's got a loop, but you don't have a control over the level, or it doesn't have a loop at all. You can add a loop to just about any Marshall. You can have a good amp tech add a good no loss loop. Somebody like Friedman can do that and add a very nice transparent loop to your Marshall. If what you're saying is it's got an effects loop, but you don't have an effects send level, you can put a volume pedal, low impedance. You want to use a 25K low impedance volume pedal from the send into the volume pedal, and then go to all your other effects after that. Now you'll be able to do things like fade into, reverbs and delays and stuff like that, and then fade out, and the tails will keep going using the pedal. Yeah. Okay, what else we got here? Arthur says he just got his notification that I'm live. Yeah, those things don't always work, but I figure this is week 182, so everybody knows I'm here. If they're, it's been years of these Sundays, so at this point, that's why I keep it consistent, because it's like, it's amazingly consistent. It's like generally when I'm here doing a show by myself, I've got 437 people online right now. It's somewhere around 400 to 450, and it just stays there. Occasionally it goes up, and I'm like, wow, where'd more people come from this week? That's interesting. But it's always interesting to me. And then if I have a guest, sometimes it'll shoot up to 750, 1,000, maybe a little bit more. Because Peter Frampton's more interesting than me, so. I probably overdue for a guest, right? I got to talk to some people, see about getting some more folks on. But I really, to be honest, I love having guests, and I love when that happens. But I really enjoy doing it on my own as well, because I can go fast like this, and we can change subjects and stuff when I'm not. It's like a different show, right? When you got guests on these shows, it's slower, and there's less interaction with you guys. That's what I find. It's not a bad thing, it's just different, and I part of me does like this, talking about switchers and going fast and all this stuff. At least I think I'm going fast. Sorry, there's a super chat. It's VBoss. What's up? How are you? It's a silly question. After you're playing at home sitting on my chair, I realized I'm having a hard time playing standing up. Yeah, you just have to practice. There ain't no substitute for it. That's what I find, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And you actively actually just have to stand. There's no substitute for doing that, and get used to playing the stuff that you're used to playing sitting down, standing up. Sorry, I don't have a better answer than that, but it's part of why when I go to do auditions, or I learn the song sitting down, but then I make sure leading up to the week before, or a few days before, or whatever, if I have that much time, I'll start playing standing up, programming my pedal board, getting all my sounds in order, and I play through the stuff as though I was going to be standing in it, because you don't want the first time that you're in the hot seat and you got to do it, whether that's a gig or whether it's at an audition or whatever, you don't want that time to be the first time you've played that stuff standing up. You have to practice standing up. Let's be honest, there's just no substitute, So thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. I do. Love the Line 6004 and MM4 effects. They emulate Stompbox, Brigade, and Rack favorites. They do quite well. Anything that's good recently doing the same. Well, I think the HX effects kind of puts that all into one. So for me, if you like those particular sounds, you're going to find that I think you're not going to find any sacrifice by going to an HX effects, and then you can store presets more, and it's small. I'm a big fan of the HX effects. I used it for all my clinic tours in Europe, the States, and Asia, and that was the thing I took and used, especially on the whole last run, using it with the PT15. Honestly, it's terrific, and I could gig with an HX effects and do my job. I mean, like, whether it's, I went over the first time I did anything with a classic rock show. We did a big morning TV show in London, and I just had the PT15 and an HX effects, and it worked just fine. It works really good. So check out that unit. That's my recommendation. if you like it. It's been out for a few years now, but it's still a great unit. You can probably find one used, I bet, and be just fine, you know. This is later than usual, says Hollywood actress. I know it's going. I'm just having fun, and there's still lots of folks here, so maybe I'll just go for 3 hours. I don't know. I don't know. I've got other stuff to do, but not pressing. Like I have to get this done by 5 p.m. or something. So I am getting hungry though, so I'm gonna bust into this whoops macro bar. Bear with me. Ah. Banana. Delicious. Prolonged power, it says. Prolonged power. I need prolonged power. What else we got here? Hit the thumbs up, says Steven. Thanks, man. Please do. It always helps. I bet there's a bunch of different folks here, so I'm going to show you guys because I really love it. This new guitar that I got, if you haven't seen it yet, but I picked up this one this week from my friends at Sur. They've been working on it for a while because I've been wanting to experiment. Nice people at EMG sent me some pickups. The reason that I'm doing this is noise. It's less about the tones because I love my pickups and my, you know, I'm an old school, you know, Almaco magnet pickup guy. But this room having its noisy issues, I wanted to get some different pickups and try for low noise, and they're working quite well. And you know, interestingly, I never owned a guitar with EMGs before, and I quite like them. They sound pretty good to me. I was saying it's akin to sort of having a preamp pedal in line before the amp. They don't have like a really loud thing or anything, but they just sound, you know, there's a slight hi-fi, or I don't know if it's compressed or what, but I quite like the sound. I'm used to the, you know, I like buffers and things like that. I'm not this like purist that must have right into the amp thing. I've always got a pedal board with a buffer, and so I'm used to that stuff. The one thing, of course, you're never going to get is a certain cable length that gives you that 10 or 20 feet of cable that does that capacitance, a little bit of roll off sweet thing, right? Because you're buffered right out of the guitar. So you're going to be able to run 100 feet of cable straight to your amp if you want. It's going to be pure as hell. You know, you're going to get lots of top end still and everything. So, but it's right out of the guitar, that sound. So, but nonetheless, I think they sound really, really good. I think they're nice. It's an 85 and 2 SAs in this guitar. I got my Wilkinson bridge on there. And this is the pickguard they sent, which I'm not a Proloid pickguard guy, generally speaking. And I think this one looks cool, like the black kind of pearl thing on this guitar. It's a sexy guitar, isn't it? I mean, the Inca silver. I quite like it. I think I'm going to end up using it quite a bit, you know. The dichotomy of, you know, I don't know. I still, you know, I'll always be a passive pickup kind of guy, but that's cool. Sounds good. I like it. It's working for me. A couple of super chats there. What do we got here? Who's there? I missed one, John. Sorry about that, but I'm here. That verse riff in the Hot Mod demo is killer. Thanks. Yeah, kind of a Lydian sort of major. It's like, how do you make hard rock in major key? Sometimes that can be you know. Sometimes I realize I'm like trying to write a heavy riff and I'm in major. You know, it's like not always what you want to do, but like I really enjoy actually the kind of I love Lydian, and I love that kind of Lydian, mixed Lydian, you know, whatever. I like those sounds, and trying to write rock riffs in those sometimes is really fun for me. But I appreciate that. Thanks. A lot of people said they liked that riff, so maybe I'll turn it into a full song, you know. The Pete Thorn Luke model, sure. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's right. Ian Thornley would be a great guest for anyone. I'd love to have Ian on, actually. You know, that guy's a monster, and he's a friend too. So I should ask him if he wants to do it. Well, another super chat there. I'm going to get to that in just a sec. You know, I don't know the answer to this. Are the loops on the ES5 available to have the order rearranged? I would look at the Boss website for that. I'm not too sure. Or maybe David already answered that question. I know on the ES8 you can, that you can reorder them. I'm just not sure if they put that capability into all of their switchers. I think Prince was a big EMG user on his cloud user. Prince was a very like practical guy, and he also used a lot of Boss pedals, which all have buffers in them. He didn't give, he used what I think what worked, in a live context. Prince was, he's obviously a musical genius. Prince is a musical genius, and yeah, yeah, EMGs work for him. They also look cool. I bet that was a big part of it. I want the pickups all white. Could have been, right? Because that guitar, had that look, and of course they work good and they sound good. So he was a classy guy with an eye for fashion. Do you bias your own amps? I'm wondering whether to give it a go or whether I'm too chicken. I think it's really relatively simple. And if you watch some videos online of there's some, good biasing, like whatever, you get the right, you get a multimeter and one of those, I don't know where you get them from, but you can do a little bit of research, probably figure it out. And for your particular amp, I wouldn't be too worried about it. I mean, I would just follow the advice as far as what not to touch in there, and just be careful and ask some questions of amp techs and stuff like that. Somebody you trust, and they will show you how to do it. And just follow those. I think it's fine if you want to bias your own amp. Generally speaking, it's you have to kind of know what you're doing, but it ain't that. It's not rocket science. It's about as hard as probably change the oil on your car once you learn how to do it. It's like, well, that's not hard. It's just there's high voltage in there, and you gotta watch it. So don't be careful about things like jewelry hanging down and stuff like that, like inside if you got a chain or something. Those are the things that you learn the hard way generally, I think. Any info on Kim Mitchell as a guest? I'm gonna ask him and see if he can come on the show. I'd love to have Kim. So I'm sorry I haven't done that. I've been I got no excuse other than laziness. Do you have a favorite Beatles song? Wow. Not really. I mean, there's so many great ones. That's like asking me what's my favorite guitar, but I've got a lot of. I mean, Julia is really beautiful. That came to mind right away. I'm a really big fan of the 66 kind of era, 65, 66, early 67. Like, I love Sgt. Pepper's and I love what came later and stuff too, but I love that time when the Beatles were starting to experiment more and go, well, now we can kind of do what we want. So Revolver and Rubber Soul are really, I love that sound. It's a little bit of a bridge between the cute Beatles and the Mop Tops or whatever, and then what was about to come, and it's a nice combination of like still pop songs, but they're getting sophisticated, but not too psychedelic yet. Getting there, but so it's hard for me to pick a song, but I'm going to say Revolver and Rubber Soul are always some of my favorite. I love the, I'm not like a. I like simplicity and stuff like that. So they're still simple and they're not too out there, and I love the out there stuff too, but I find if I want to put on an album when I'm driving the car or something and just enjoy it, probably Revolver and Rubber Soul are my go-tos. Then I feel like they got back to that, by the time, Abbey Road, Let It Be and stuff, there's some similarities there between Revolver and Rubber Soul, I think. It's more like the super experimental Magical Mystery Tour, White Album, Sgt. Pepper's era. I love that stuff too, but I can't say I love it as much as, I don't know, that's just me. It's all awesome. It's all brilliant. Jeff Beck's A Day in the Life is my favorite Beatles song. Boy, he sure plays the hell out of that, doesn't he? I love that. Man, he's great at interpreting vocal melodies on guitar. There ain't nobody like him that can do that. From because we ended as lovers to so funny. There was that thing with Yngwie recently, like that they reprinted, Guitar Player reprinted. It was an old article from like 93 where he was critiquing 10 songs or something by different artists, and one of them was Because We've Ended as Lovers by Jeff Beck, and he's like, this is Jeff Beck, this is awful. It's out of tune. It's like, I can't believe it's him. It's like, dude, the beauty is in a singer is not perfect, and he's interpreting a voice, it's like a beautiful singing voice, and his when Yngwie was hearing was out of tune is me just hearing his character, and it's a fine line. It's a fine friggin' line, but Jeff Beck, can walk that line like nobody, really great. So yeah. Well, that's interesting. Stevie Ray's Hamilton Stratocaster originally had EMG pickups used in the Couldn't Stand the Weather video. So does it have EMGs in that video though? I'm not sure, but I remember that. I know the guitar you're talking about with the flame top and all that, and it says his name is inlaid on the neck and all that, right? Did he did he did he record with it or anything? I wonder. It's interesting. Pete should try the Vary cable. Who makes the Vary? Is there a cable that kind of changes the? It's like a cable tone kind of thing. I've never tried that, so that would be interesting to try for sure. Yeah, yeah. Rain's a great. That's certainly an awesome Beatles song. For sure. Yeah, yeah. What else we got here? What's my opinion of the prices on? I haven't tried that pedal, so I don't know. I've seen varying opinions and stuff of that pedal, the Boss Tone Bender. I love the fact that do stuff like that. And to me, that's Yoshi. Yoshi is a great guy. He's the boss of Boss. He's the president of Boss, and I've hung out with him quite a bit. And he is a cool dude. I really like Yoshi. Yoshi told me once, like, literally had like an izakaya over like food and drinks and stuff. He's like, I just want to make stuff that's cool. You love it. He's the president of Boss. It's like the biggest pedal company in the world. He's like, I don't care really about like, if it's a big, he's like, I just want to it's got to be cool. I always remember that. I was like, I love this dude. He's cool. He is cool, and he's been there since the 70s. So, he's a really great guy. Follow him on, I think it's Yoshi.rock or something, or Yoshi. I can't remember, but he's on Instagram, and he's always posting great pictures of meals and stuff. And he's a terrific dude. So a really cool guy. So I really appreciate him. He's the guy that you want to be there at Boss. That's why you see things like the Waza pedals and the tone bender, and he's got a great sort of aesthetic or whatever that he subscribes to. Thornley was on Josh Smith's channel a while back. That's right, he did do that. Yeah, I recently did something with Josh, so that's coming up. Josh's show, he interviewed me, so you'll see that coming up pretty soon. Oh, there's a super chat up there. It's James Bell. What's up, man? Where's the? Let me find it here so I can highlight it. Oh, there's another one I missed there. How did I miss these? I didn't see these. Craig, would a SUR reactive load work as a good substitute for the ISO line out for use with the Musicom Labs parallelizer in a wet-dry setup? Yeah, actually you can use it. You can just go through the through jack right to your cabinet, and now you're sort of disabling the load in the reactive load, but you will still be able to take the unaffected line out, run into the parallelizer on the IR not disabled line out into the parallelizer, and then do what you want to do. You can totally do that. The only thing that they don't have on there is a ground lift, and like there's a few things on there's a phase switch on here, and there's a ground lift. So if you have a ground loop, you'll have to get rid of it in another way, but you could do that with another thing like an ISO transformer or something, one of the Palmers, or the $35 one from Samson that's got a switch on it. I've shown on the show before. So just beware of that. That's the only thing. But yeah, you can totally do what you're saying without needing one of these, which is a bigger expense. So you might not run into an issue depending on what you're using, ground loops and stuff, but chances are you might. Just depends. These things are interesting. Yeah. What? Sorry, there's another super chat. No one missed that one. Who's that? James. I don't think that was. Or was it? Oh yeah, I did this one. Yeah. Do you buy us your own amps? Yeah, the Beatles are still relevant when it comes to songwriting. I hear a lot of Beatles in Billie Eilish. She's a big Beatles fan, I think. Yeah, there's still when it comes to sort of pop music and great. I mean, the Beatles did so much, and we can still draw on it, and more than anything, just the spirit is just kind of what their creative spirit. If you haven't seen the Paul McCartney, Rick Rubin on Hulu, that show, you really get, it's like a class in songwriting in a way to me. the way Paul's breaking it down, talking about the different parts coming in and things. He's also talking, his spirit is infectious, and you see it in the Dave Grohl Sound City documentary too. He's in there, and they're talking about they're cutting background vocals, right? That scene where Dave and him are in the booth singing, and they cut a 2-part harmony. And then Dave is like, oh, man. Like, he's obviously tripping because he's in there with Paul McCartney singing. And then he says, man, I wish it was always this easy. Like, and I don't know if he meant, you're such a great singer, and here I am singing with you, you're a legend, or if he meant, writing these parts into the flow like this and getting this song done. Like, because it struck me as that was a very fun day when they were recording that track that they did where Paul was playing the little cigar box guitar and all that. But Dave just saying, I wish it was always this easy. And Paul goes, it is. That's like going to church, man. Because it's just like, you just got it from, I mean, don't make, he's Dave Grohl, who's probably worth $400 million or something at this point, and is a genius in his own right, is getting schooled by Paul McCartney in that moment. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. It is this easy if you want it to be. Just let this be what you do. This is it, right? It is. Yes. That's like the coolest to me, and that's the headspace it resonated with me, because it doesn't need to be more complicated than, sometimes we make things more complicated than they need to be. And we all need to turn that off. And he does too, I'm sure. But he, it's so brilliant, so brilliant. The way they used to record, I mean, with less tracks and more, you had to commit, make decisions, collapse things down, mix down, and then end up with, you ended up with what you ended up with. But there was don't make this harder than it needs to be. When we got to 24 tracks and 48 tracks, then people tying to 127 tracks and doing all this stuff, that's one way you can go. Or you can use 4 tracks, and bounce and do things the way they did and end up with the Beatles. So it's really interesting to me. But I love these moments in these documentaries that we get, and there's a lot of that brilliance in the Hulu documentary that you'll see, where he's like, I love when they're soloing parts and he's pulling up different things, and then Paul's like, you listen to this, and there's some part of a song, I can't remember what song it was, where he's pulling it up, he goes, could be another song, like, and he starts singing another part over a classic Beatles, it might have been his bass part or something. It's like, this could be something else, and he's hearing it go in a different direction. Oh, fuck, that's so cool. Like, that to me is like magic, and he's his age and he's still living in that zone, and it's so great. I love it. I don't know. I love it. It's good stuff. So, yeah. Tom says it's too smoky to go outside. Where are you, man? I wonder where you're at. I'm sorry to hear that. It fires, man. It sucks, the drag. Stay inside. Kale Joe says, which Univibe do you like more than the Sabadeus funky vibe or the Pedalpon Gypsy? Both are great. I would say that the Sabadeus, am I saying that right? I don't want to say it wrong. I'm sorry, dude, if you're out there listening. It's more of a uniform kind of, it doesn't have as lumpy of a sound as, say, the Pedalpon, which does more of that yeah. It's a little bit more right? Like the phasing or whatever quality of it is a bit more even. So what do you want? Because there's a couple different flavors there, but those are both great options. The Pedalpon to me sounds a little more vintage, I think. Doesn't mean it sounds better, just means it sounds a little more vintage. If you want that thing, I tend to like that thing. I really like that about it. In a small format, because these are big devices that can take up a lot of space on your board. If you're okay with that, that's great. If you want something smaller, it's hard to beat the stuff from Drybell. They've got a couple great versions, the V1 and V2 versions of I think it's called the Vibe Machine. Vibe Machine. Anyway, from Drybell, they're Univibes. They're the size of a Phase 90, right? Those are really, really good sounding to me. So check those out. And let's see. So I'll go another 10 minutes. We're going to go full 3 hours today. Why the hell not? I'm enjoying it. We got 440 more people came on. That's just brilliant. I'm having fun. You folks are great. Great. Okay. Just Square says, I'll take one sweet, slightly out of tune note from Jeff Beck over 1,000 perfect notes from Yngwie. You know, there's no right or wrong. It's like Yngwie speaks to a lot of people through more is more and his notes. And I love Yngwie, you know, and he's a legend, you know, and he does what he does great. And Jeff's a legend too, you know. And you know, even Yngwie's criticisms I like because he's Yngwie, and you don't want him to be any different. He's outrageously himself, and sometimes he's outspoken, and sometimes he's cuts other people down and stuff. But he's a character, and he's a legend in my mind. So he just didn't appreciate Jeff's, you know. But whatever. That's why we get Yngwie, and he's a different thing, and that appeals to people, you know. What he does, there is no peer, you know. I've never heard anybody that can do Yngwie as good as Yngwie. And I've never heard anybody that can do Jeff as good as Jeff. So, you know, human beings. It's interesting, you know. The Beatles will always matter, just like Eddie for guitar. Yeah, man, stuff timeless. Just like Beethoven will always matter, right? You know, Rachmaninoff will always matter, you know, and Charlie Parker will always matter, and you know, B.B. King and Eddie Van Halen, and you know, all these folks. The Mojo Vibe is really good. That was my first vibe, and I just, to be honest, I haven't tried it a lot in recent times, but I still have that pedal. It was one of my earliest. I think I've had a Mojo Vibe since the 90s, which is, you know, a long time ago now. So, anyways. I want to write with Dave Grohl. So do I. Me too. So Dave Grohl, 320 million. Well, 320, 400. Who's counting? Right? At that point. If he was worth 400, he could give me 80, and he'd still be worth 320, and I'd be worth 80. That'd be cool. I'd go to Hawaii for a while. You look like a runner. I'm not actually. I cycle though, but not enough lately. I like to ride my bike. That's Patrick. I like to ride my bike on the bike path of Santa Monica. Lately, I took to riding all the way from Santa Monica all the way down to like Manhattan Beach. It's a great ride. It's about 25 miles round trip, I think. At least the way that I do it. And it's a great workout and a great day. And I'm not all super serious cyclist about it. I take my time. I stop and, like, you know, go down there and might have a glass of wine and some lunch, and chill out, and get on the bike and go, holy shit, it's a long way back. But I always enjoy it, and pedal all the way back and get a little bit of exercise and some sunshine. Some sunshine. Some sunshine. I don't know why I'm talking like that. Vibe Machine is killer. Yeah, that's a good one. It's a really good one. Top chat again. When are you back in the UK? Did I miss one? Sorry. Saw you at Peach Guitars twice. Probably, as far as I know, in the new year, but I don't know yet. You know, I don't know 100% because we're in this limbo land. But I'm pretty sure that you know, as far as I know, I think it's going to be in the new year. So we'll see. We'll see. We will see. All the way to the bottom. Can you suggest a way of getting a musical mentor? I live in a somewhat rural area. Well, it's never been easier online, right? Here you are with us, all of us, and we're talking amongst ourselves. But, you know, a lot of people do lessons via Skype. I mean, folks like Iavani is in Australia, right, James? He's a wonderful guitar player, great guy, and he's ripping on guitar. So you could do, I think he does Skype lessons sometimes. You know, a lot of people do Skype lessons. I would look into that probably, trying to find, you know, I think maybe, doesn't Andy Wood do it? I think, you know. So, you know, I would go that route. Are you missing 42 Gear Street? I've never been to that one. You know, so I guess so. Yeah, I'm not planning on going to Europe anytime real soon, although I miss it. But I think I'm just gonna wait until the new year. You know, makes the most sense. Yeah, that movie with Dave Grohl where he interrupts the session because he promised his daughter he'd go swimming. Well, yeah, he's a family guy, you know. Dave's got his head on straight, man, and he's got a good heart, I think, at the core of it, you know. He really appreciates his mom, and he's got a good mom. She was a teacher, right? And his kids, and I'm gonna tell you, I mean, I was never more impressed. I went to a Foo Fighters barbecue once that was at Rami's place studio, and uh, there was probably 300 people there. Well, maybe not that many. Maybe it was 150 or 200 people. But anyways, it was fun. They had bands and an open bar and stuff, and it was all kinds of people hanging out. It was a really good time. And Dave was working the whole time at the grill. He had a baseball hat on backwards. And he was running back and forth with plates and going out to the grill. And he was flipping burgers and he was cooking the entire time. He worked the entire party. $320 million, and he's back there. He's at his party, and he was cooking. He didn't hire somebody to do it. He did it. That's freaking cool, right? I mean, he's an impressive guy. He's got a great, he's got a big heart, it seems like, and he strikes me as the kind of guy that'd probably be like, no bullshit. If you're in his organization, I think you better work hard because he does, But he also knows how to have a good time, and he knows how to keep it real. But probably because he really did grow up touring in a van, and I always take to heart that a friend of mine told me this, and it made a lot of sense. Your emotional growth stops when you make your first million. I probably brought that up before, but that made a lot of sense to me. So if you were 18 when you made your first $1 million, you weren't, like, you're not fully developed in your head yet, right? And so you might suffer some degree of whatever because you now have fuck you money. And when you have that kind of money, people just kind of placate to you a little bit, and they cow down or whatever, to you, and they want to keep their job and they work under you. So, and that's where I think of that a lot of the rock stars can go awry a little bit if they made a lot of, or sports people, right? We see it in sports all the time with people with too much money, and they maybe fall apart a little bit because they're not adults yet. And, truly not adults, I mean, when I think about the stupid stuff I did until my 30s, even after, you're always learning, right? But it's like, you're really learning when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. And if you make enough money then that you're now the boss, ooh, man, it's a hard road, It's an easy road in one way, but then a hard road in other ways, because you end up, you know what I'm talking about. Dave, yeah, he was young, but I mean, it was a minute, that he was out there with Nirvana and slugging it out, playing with punk bands and stuff, and touring in vans. And he like, I think that guy knows the value of $1, and he knows how to treat people right. And, he's just got his head on straight. Plus, but, obviously a good mom, we see that in some of his, a lot of that goes a long way, right? He's just really got he's a well-adjusted individual, I think, that's done really well. He's got a great work ethic. So, yeah. Craig says, I killed the jailbreak riff on that Marshall mod episode. Thanks. I love that riff. That's like a go-to for me. I already brought it up in this show, I think, that riff, and use it as an example. But yeah, that's a fun one. That's a fun one. Yeah. The new generation of musicians should really relish and appreciate when you've got like folks like Brian May showing you how to play Bohemian Rhapsody, because it didn't exist 10 years ago. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. It's a good, positive thing. Just interested what settings on channel 2 the PT15 gets you old school classic AC/DC. I would say probably running the gain on 4. Sometimes, just like AC/DC would, I run it a little higher live. So like when you hear me play Thunderstruck with the Classic Rock Show, there's a video of that online, I might on that have the gain at 5, but really you kind of want it around 4. So it's it's 3 or 4. A lot of people, they run them high, and it's just kind of that way, and they're like, that's got a lot of gain. It's like you can turn it down and get more lower gain Marshall sounds out of the amp too, if you want to. So, that's cool. Tom says he got to play a few shows with Dave when he was in Scream in DC. So you know what that was like. Where were you guys playing, like 930 and places like that, or in smaller places maybe? That's cool. You still look like you're in 30s. No, but thank you. My hair never got up and left. I was lucky. And I eat pretty clean. That's it. I'm going to attribute it to that stuff. Any industry grapevine and news on what Alex Van Halen is doing? I bet he's just chilling. I know he used to live close to Melissa Etheridge, so it's a big, nice side of town, LA area, and he's got probably a beautiful house out there, and he's probably chilling. He's probably having a nice, just kind of taking it easy time. Alex is not young, he'd be 67 now, 68 years old, something like that.
Are you over 50? Oh God, I don't want to answer that. That probably tells you everything you need to know. What is the best clean to mean amp with the guitar volume ever, in your opinion? Well, I gotta say that Trainwreck. Watch the Trainwreck video I did a few weeks ago. Oh boy, there's a lot of tone in there from on the volume control of the guitar. You know, really, really, really amazing. Have you ever met the other Pete Anderson? No, but he's a bit of a legend. You know, and I appreciate, one thing I got from Pete Anderson early on was he was an early advocate of using the pod as his backup. And his idea was always having a line running, like, maybe, I don't know if he used an A/B switch to his main rig and then one to the pod or whatever, but he'd always have a line going to the pod. And kind of with, I don't know if he MIDI'd it or what he did, but he'd have some sounds in there that kind of aped his, main rig. And his thinking was, if his whole amp rig goes down, he's now got that thing that's still plugged into the PA that's going, that's his backup. And I thought, oh, that's a really good idea. And that's kind of what I ended up doing with the, I don't go as far as running it simultaneously all the time, but I do have it plugged in and ready to go, the HX Stomp these days. And it's the same thing where I just made a couple sounds that could mimic my, that was on Classic Rock Show Tour, where that was my backup. And then with Yoshi, I did that with the Helix. There was a bit of it wasn't my guitar, it was the other guitar player, and I really felt for him, but he had a rough show where his main rig died and he wasn't able to play like a couple tunes. And after that, Yoshi was like, we got to find a solution to this. Like, you guys need backups. And so I said, what about the Helix? And so we got a couple of Helixes and programmed them up, and those became our backup setups, where we would have them on deck, always ready to go with the lines run to the PA, so that if the amps went down, you just went and plugged in the Helix and good to go. So anyway, I really learned that, I'll say, from Pete Anderson. It was his idea when I read about it, probably in Guitar Player magazine or something 15 years ago, or maybe more. I thought that's a really good idea, and finally kind of put that together. And he even mentioned in the article, he said it's happened a couple times, and I could still hear my guitar out in the PA. I knew it was right. When I was playing, I hear the guy like pull the, my amp would be dead, but I'd keep playing and I could hear the guitar in the PA. And I knew it was the pod, he'd probably then get it in his wedge or something, but whatever was going on. But well, you guys, this has been fun. I should probably split. It's 3 hours. We're 3 hours in. So just went over 3 hours, 3:01. That's enough for one day, right? Good old super chats. There's Bruce. Thanks, Bruce. You guys know your super chat. Thank you so much for that this week. The Illuminate. This video will be coming. I think I'll just put it out tomorrow in the morning. The pedal's been out for a few days. I was going to try and get it out for the release, but I was just a little behind. And but anyway, you'll hear my interpretation of how I'm using this thing from the nice folks at Nunabur. Great programmable reverb pedal that also has a little bit of echo and detune and other stuff going on in there. Mainly a reverb though. And Gary says I can't see any gray hairs. Sometimes I stick crap in there too, but actually right now this is my color, man. This is my color. I don't have a lot of gray. I got lucky, man. I got the short end of the stick with the eyes, but other stuff's working out. I appreciate that. I do. Overall, the Drybell Vibe Machine V2 is the best to get. If you want a nice portable vibe for your pedal board that's not a great big, yes, it's the best I've tried. I think it sounds wonderful. I've got a video on it. You can watch and see what you think. Ben Coombe says, great hang today. Thanks, Ben, for being here. And also, Ben's got his show, I do believe, right, Ben? Later on this evening. So hang with Ben and the Crazy Canadians. And that'll be fun. Want to hear about more guitar stuff. There's one more. I've listened here. I've had my drive pedals in the front and all my time bass delay in the loop. I don't know if I hear a difference. If you run your amp really clean, what you're going to notice is maybe not that much difference. You probably notice the effects sound a bit more pronounced and mid-rangey, maybe, like your reverb and your delay, than if you run them in the loop. So if you use a Bella, for example, a Sir Bella, it's very clean. Almost don't really need a loop in that amp, I think. I would probably run the effects in front if you're using it as a clean machine. It's fine to run your effects in front of any clean amplifier, Twin reverb, whatever. Sounds great. Can even sound better because it's kind of juicy going into the preamp and gives you a bit of color, you know. It's when you get into crunch driving, you know, a Marshall, it's not going to work. My guess is you're not using a Marshall. So, yeah, it's important to know, you know. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Jay says with Pete Anderson, when I was talking about him using the pod, that became Pete's main rig and he runs it into a power amp. Interesting. He was a convert. He went to the dark side, the digital dark side. Whatever works, man. Whatever gets the job done. You know, it's all good. Todd's talking about Charlie Watts taking some time off from the Stones. Yeah, I heard he had maybe some sort of procedure in operation he's still recovering from. Everything's fine, but he just feels like he needs a bit more recovery time. So Steve Jordan's going to play with the Stones. He's the natural choice because, of course, he's got a long history, I do believe, with Keith and stuff. And that'll be. I love Charlie with the Stones. Charlie's the drummer in the Stones. But I'm kind of intrigued, kind of like hearing Axl Rose sing with AC/DC. Kind of intrigued. Kind of want to hear what that sounds like. So, you know, nothing wrong with listening to Steve play some Stones songs. It's okay. Charlie will be back, I'm sure. Or if he's not, if he just decided to retire, like Alex, come on, service. You know, he's been a loyal rock and roller all these years, and at some point, you know what I'm saying. So, I look forward to Sundays with. Hey, I look forward to Sundays with you too. Bumper, it's great to have you here. I appreciate it. And be safe on that bike. Too many concussions. Hey, I got a helmet. And knees are shot from cycling. My knees are good. Actually, I think maybe if anything, it probably helps me because I've had knee issues not recently. I do have a helmet though, and I did take one spill on my bike and kind of scratched my arm up and stuff. And luckily, it wasn't worth. But I fell on the bike path because my tires aren't good on sand. And that bike path can get sandy in spots. And if I'm going around a corner and there's sand, I'm a little terrified at this point because it doesn't handle it with whatever tires I got on my bike, a Cannondale or whatever it is. So I'm pretty careful now. But yeah, I got a helmet for this reason. First one I've ever had. I've never cycled with a helmet before. I'm cool with that now. I'm not infallible, you know. No helmet mandatory in the Netherlands. Yeah, they ride a lot of bikes over there. I mean, I've ridden bikes in the Netherlands, and that's next level. It's like driving a car, like with the stoplights and the lanes and everything. You better pay attention because it's like serious business. It's not like recreational biking there, is it? I mean, it can be, but they know how to, you know, there's rules. The U.S. is like the Wild West riding a bike compared to the Netherlands, you know, which is its own thing. I don't even want to go really. I'm enjoying myself, but I'm going to go. It's probably time to go. I'm going to get some food and then I'm going to finish the video for this guy. And I got a bunch of other stuff coming this week. I've been waiting on getting this, not waiting, but I just haven't gotten this one done yet. This is kind of Brown Deluxe. So I got to get that done. And a bunch of other stuff I've got to do. Some exciting stuff coming up, new modeling thing, some other things I got to get to. I got a lot to do. I better go. All right, everybody have a great week. Thanks for your super chats and I'll see you next Sunday. Rock on, rockers.